How you
How,
doing, Max?
how you doing? Erik Sprague, welcome to the show, Mad Max Radio, Live 365, iHeartRadio. We have the one and only Erik Sprague, aka the
Yep.
Lizardman. Welcome to the show, man. How's everything going?
Thank you. Thank you. Things are going great.
I'm happy to hear that. You're in
Yeah.
Texas?
I am. I'm in Austin, Texas.
What brought you down to there? Because I know you were. I learned about you growing up. You,
Right.
especially with being in Kentucky. I know with your father being in the military, Vietnam, and the services, and then you were in Ellenburg, upstate New York. So what
Yep.
brought you down to
Yeah,
Texas
you get the
settle
whole
down?
Wikipedia article right there, didn't you? um, yeah, so I mean, I basically grew up in upstate New York, and I was in Albany, New York, when I actually made the decision to become a full-time freak. You basically I made up my own job title, right? I said I'm going to be a professional freak, and that was in '96 in Albany. But I pretty much it's the oldest story there is. Why does any man end up anywhere? I went on tour and I met a girl, and my wife was born and raised in Austin and will not leave Austin, so we live in Austin.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you can't beat the weather here. You don't miss the cold New York weather.
Oh no! I'll tell you, see, that was a big thing for me. I was not at all sad to leave New York, but like I grew up skiing, snowmobiling. My family, my dad raced dog sled. Like I
Oh,
was a dog
wow.
sled racer in elementary school. I raced a one dog team up in Tupper Lake, New York. But yeah, like, I feel like it's something that when you grow up with something, you think it's normal, right? And
Hmm.
then you find out like, oh, the rest of the world has no idea what it's like. Okay, I grew up in a town of less than 1,500 people, just a little over 1,000 people on the border of Quebec, at the north of the Adirondacks. People think like, oh, they go, hiking or camping in the Adirondacks. No. It's beyond that. And it's just, farmland and a lot of abandoned land. There's there. So where I was very rural, and it's a valley where people think about the snow in like Buffalo. We had the same or worse because we're getting hit with Lake Champlain on one side and the St. Lawrence, the canal up there. So the weather would come in this, and the valley would fill in. And I can remember one time I said this casually, and somebody was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Because I was telling a story about shoveling the snow off the roof of my grandmother's house. How you could literally walk up the snowbank till you were on the roof, and you would shovel the snow off because the weight of the snow was literally going to damage the roof if you didn't. I like you guys don't have to do that in the winter. I mean, I don't know if you don't have winter, you might not do it, but I thought everywhere that had winter, you had that. And it turns out, no, like I grew up, basically like like an Eskimo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Snowshoeing, cross country skiing, all that was great. But yeah, leaving that behind, not even a second thought. Like I was so happy when I got to Texas. I'm like, yeah, I'll never shovel snow again.
No, that's definitely a positive. How high up was this airplane? Because you were hanging off of the skids of helicopters. I heard because your father was
Oh,
doing
well,
work.
actually that's so the whole thing about the helicopter skid thing is because my dad was a mountain warfare instructor. He was at the Ethan Allen firing range in Jericho, Vermont, and yeah, he taught at the mountain warfare school for the Army for years until he was medically retired. I mean, yeah, he's been done now for just about 20 years. But yeah, when I was growing up, that was my dad was a soldier, right? That
Hmm.
was yeah. I grew up going on to base with them. We lived on base for brief periods of time and everything. But when they founded the Mountain Warfare School, they had a family day. And I want to say I was like 10 or 11 years old. And at 10 or 11 years old, they were running me through the whole training course as if I was a cadet. Like I was rappelling off a 150-foot tower. They had the helicopter skid is actually a simulation. So it's like half of a helicopter, but it's up on this tower that I think that was only about 50 feet up there. But it's to practice exiting a helicopter, without actually having to fly a helicopter. And the fun thing about that, like that sticks in my story. I tell stories about that a lot because when you repel out, when you kick off, you got to kick off. You got to let yourself drop because as soon as you break, you will swing back in. Right now, if you break too soon or you break right away, you're going to smash your face off the skid of that helicopter. Now, keep in mind, I'm 10, 11 years old, but my dad has, as soon as I could stand up, I was on skis. I've been climbing and all that. And we're a little loose. And this is the late 70s, early 80s. Safety gear and OSHA, not really as much of a concern, right? But I am looking around. Even as a little kid, I looked around like everybody else was wearing a helmet because they were soldiers. They were government property. You don't damage it, right? There were standards like that. But we were getting to go through on this family day as a kid. I got no helmet on. I look at my dad. I'm like, am I supposed to be wearing a helmet? He goes, just don't break too soon. Okay, Dad. And out you go.
Do you think that that was pretty much the beginning of the spark for you getting into this? Because before you did the whole body modification, you were doing the sideshow stuff. I know you started reading books about
Right.
Japan. We'll get into that, but do you think that was the spark for getting
I
into sideshow early on?
I think that it's part of my childhood, which is indicative, yeah, of the way that I was brought up was a a go ahead and try it kind of
Hmm.
mentality, right? And also a it's country living, right? I'm growing up in dairy farm country, even though neither of my parents we weren't farmers, but all my friends were. So you go sleep over at a buddy's house, then you're working on the farm just like all the other kids, right? It's get up at 5 a.m. with the cows, right? And you grow up like that. There's a lot of getting knocked around. Like I know people who got their legs caught in threshers growing up. We all knew somebody who was maimed by farm equipment, right? That was regular daily life for us. But the other side of that is those people were still working on the farm, right?
Hmm.
My kid in my class, Timmy, literally got his leg in a thresher. It took forever to heal, whatever, but he's a farmer now. And I'm like, it's that you get the shit kicked out of you, but to keep going type of stuff. And it's just like too, like there's not a lot to do, so you find your own entertainment. Like we used to throw ourselves out of the haylofts, like see like how high we could jump, and you get the wind knocked out if you didn't do it. And then you get to like middle school and high school, and this is way before Fight Club, the movie. We didn't call it Fight Club. We were bored on Saturday night, so we'd go hang out in a barn. And maybe somebody would steal a little beer. You do whatever, and eventually you start wrestling around with your buddy, and then it turns into a little bit of a brawl, and you separate out, and you start drinking some more. Like that was So there's the idea of seeing a stunt or something and approaching a stunt. I try to do it smart. I had something, but I never had that sort of fear. Like it was the kid. It wasn't oh, would you ever try that sort of thing? It'd be like, when's my turn?
No, and I'm telling you, this is really what gave you the courage early on. It's that F around and find out mentality, pretty
Yeah.
much that kids had back in the day, and you
Yep.
took the chances.
Yeah, and they say like that's again because it was different. It was the '70s and areas. I'm
Hmm.
Gen X, born in '72, right? And my dad grew up in that town, and so it was well known. My family and my granddad and all that. So like it meant something to be my dad's son. Like I realized that fairly early on, by the way that my dad interacted with people, and it's known in the community as helps them out. And also, I saw like I think it just came out too from his military career. Like I can remember it was actually an uncle of mine that I was a kid, I just met him because they were they lived in North Carolina, right? They came up to
Hmm.
visit, and there was as a kid, I didn't even understand the joke, right? But it was a racist joke. I didn't really understand like that. And I saw my dad, like literally just with his eyes, walk this dude outside and correct him about, like, because, dad didn't play that shit in any way, shape, or form, I mean, even though, I grew up in a very white county, he'd been, he had served he often talks about his drill sergeant, who was one of his first black people he got to know, in the '60s, much less integrated time, but he was integrated with the army. And yeah, he would not stand for anything like that. You knew where the lines were with him. But, like you said, he gave me the courage. If I was like, hey, dad, I want to do this, like, go do it. Like I said, he'd throw me on skis. Like, hey, you want to go jump off that? You want to go do this, whatever? It's like, yeah, let's go do it. We were a very active family like that, too. It's like, oh, if I saw something on TV, see like tennis or highlight, be like, oh, fuck it, let's try it. It was that, like I said, that mentality, the mentality of my family, and I think just the culture in the area I grew up in was, just go do it. If you see something cool, give it a shot. It's the worst that happens. You get knocked on your ass and you get back up.
And I wanted to say thank you to your father for the service as well. I have a lot of respect for the troops. I know we're going through a very difficult time right now. I know you're a big liberal, and
I
so am
am.
I.
I am way. But it's funny because my people expect my dad having a long and very successful military career. They're like, oh, what is he? Like, no. See, my dad was drafted. He was very adamant. Like when I was 17, 18 years old and considering like West Point and the Naval Academy and probably like that, he was like, he was just flat out. He gave me the old soldier speeches, right? He gave me the like, you got to really understand, have your eyes open to what you're agreeing to because you don't have to do this. It's not a draft and you're not a poverty case. You would be choosing to give your life away to the government. Yeah, that's what he said. He's like he's always sort of instilled that. He's like he got fed a bad situation. He got drafted. He chose
Yeah.
to make the best of it. And he made the best of it so well that now, really the government should be regretting it, because now they're paying all his medical bills and he's retired in Florida and all this shit. It's like and he's, he had some very bad heart problems. He's on an LVAD, right? But like the amount of money they've spent on him since his time in the service is like, yeah, you guys could have saved yourself some money and just not drafted him. Let him be a happy country boy and never got. But getting back to sort of the point, it is weird. And one of the things that really got me to, I was around a lot of vets, right? I've got my blood uncles and then my Army uncles, right? And some of my Army uncles growing up were guys that didn't make it all the way back from Vietnam, and we, you knew it. Even as a kid, you didn't know exactly what was wrong, or you didn't understand the depth of what was going on. But, the adults made it very clear you needed to give Uncle Jimmy some space. And, you understood what that meant. But what that kind of drove home for me, and I think this is also, a time of, you think about during the 80s, you get movies like Born on the 4th of July and stuff like that. That was what was influencing me as a teenager. And I'm seeing this. And one of the things, aside from my dad sort of being like, hey, this is what service will really be about if you go in. And a big part of it, he was like, you don't like to take orders. What do you think your life is going to be like in the military? Like, yeah, I really don't like being told what to do. That's probably not a good fit. Right. But beyond that, and it's one of those things where, I am very adamant in that I never try to tell anybody how to live their life. But if someone asks me my opinion, I will give you my breakdown. I think the biggest problem with suggesting to anyone that they go into the service in America, and this is regardless of time, this has nothing to do with now anyway, because here's the thing. The U.S. government has fucked over its war veterans since literally the Revolutionary War. The Whiskey Rebellion was about a bunch of revolutionary soldiers who weren't getting paid what they were owed by the government. And like, if you think that if you join today, tomorrow the government's going to suddenly start honoring their promises to veterans, you're a fucking idiot, right? And I appreciate the fact, obviously, that there are still people who are willing to do it regardless of that. And thank you for them. And that's wonderful, whatever. But I hope they made that decision, eyes open. I also think that it's, immoral the way that we go to, like I say, poverty cases in the military. It's like, just do an informal sample around yourself. Talk to people that have been in any branch of the military and ask them whether or not financial concern was a driving force for them going in. Because it's a major reason. It shouldn't be, right? It shouldn't be, hey, if you want to eat and have a roof over your head, you got to join the Army, right? You got to join the Marine. You got to do like that's, we're essentially blackmailing the poor of our country into doing that job. And I don't think that's good for like rank and service anyway. If you want a strong Army, then everybody needs to want to be there. Not to be like, oh shit, I'm only doing this so I can send some money home to my mom. No, you want people who want to be there. You need to make that. And that's why we need to, elevate and glorify the service of those that do it. To be like, hey, look, you are taking the short end of the stick on a lot of things for the rest of us. So the least we can do is give you that glory, right? But, instead we go and we force people into it. We say like, oh, well, you can live in the ghetto for the rest of your life, or you can join the Army. And like, those are not two good options right now.
It's crazy. It really is. And it also too, because your dad would work in the shops and then your mother was in the school system. So what was the story about your mother would make toast for the students and it made the news?
Yeah. So both my parents were teachers. So when my dad, when the drawdown happened with Vietnam, right, my dad went from regular Army to National Guard. And he was in the National Guard when he started the Mountain Warfare School, and the instructors in the warfare school were guardsmen. But instead of doing, the weekend every month, the 2 weeks, whatever, they would do like 4-week programs with a bunch of cadets at the school and teach them. They also got pulled in, like they taught special forces from other countries and things like that. My dad's whole thing was cold weather survival. So one time they sent him to Alaska for 2 months to babysit people setting up posts in the Arctic. But yeah, they both taught at the school that I went to, in a small town. There weren't other schools. That was it, right? So mom was an elementary school teacher and dad ran the wood shop, which was good because if he hadn't been drafted, he probably would have become a woodworker. He loved to do it, whatever. So it was an easy sort of thing. And he actually got that job because when they took him from the Army to the National Guard, and similar to what Florida does now, where if you're honorable service, they just give you a teaching certificate, right? And my mom always wanted to go into education. She was studying it. She got a degree in education. I don't even remember what my dad's original degree was, but he got drafted like right after graduation. But they told him in New York State, they're like, hey, you're coming out of the Army. if you want a job and you can, basically, we're going to give you this job. And so, yeah, he ran the wood shop while I was in high school. My mom taught in elementary school. The toast story with my mom, and this is another one of those, again, why I'm sort of that very typical Gen X, fuck the government, I don't trust you, anything, even when you're doing things right, I'm suspicious of what you're doing, right, is because this is the story of what happened to my mom, who, did 20 years as a public school teacher, all in elementary school. And remember, this is rural upstate New York. We got farm kids. We got kids riding the bus 60 minutes both ways, sometimes on unpaved roads, right? And they're farm kids. So they get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and do the morning chores, then catch the bus to come into school. And there's also just a lot of rural poor up there too. I mean, not a lot, because there's not a lot of people, but there's a significant portion of the population is living poverty or near poverty level, or it was in 70s and 80s when I was growing up there. So she found herself having a bunch of kids coming in who had already been up for 3, 4, maybe even 5 hours, right? Haven't really had a breakfast, right? So my mom takes it upon herself to get a little toaster, buy a loaf or a couple of loaves of bread. And then when the kids would come in the morning, she'd, like a little assembly line, they'd come in, they'd make themselves a couple of pieces of toast. They could put cinnamon on it if they want to, go sit down at their desk, eat their toast. And I don't remember if she got like juice bar or whatever, but they have something like that. And, that was when every kid got there, because there's always that little homeroom space, like kids get to class, and then before the first bell rang, and it's easy, a little bit of toast went, it's going perfectly, whatever. The local news, well, not even local news. So Plattsburgh is the biggest town in the area. That's about 30 miles away. That's where the local NBC affiliate is that you can still get. And by the way, so to point out how old this is and how rural this is, into the 1990s, we still used rabbit ears at my parents' house. There was no cable TV. There were 4 stations, and one of them was Canadian. We picked it up because we were that close to the border.
Wow.
So we're on rabbit. But the NBC affiliate in Plattsburgh, New York, finds out that there's this teacher, right, who's making breakfast for her students, making breakfast, and they come down. They do like a little fluff news piece, like you would think, right? And all right, and I feel like this is fairly. I'll check, see if you agree with me here. That seems pretty reasonable as just a fluff, feel good news piece. Who could possibly have a problem with that, right? Why would that ever be a problem? Right? Well, somebody on the school board decided that made the school look bad because a teacher was having to buy food for her students and feed them. Now, did that member of the school board say, hey, maybe the state needs to do us a breakfast program around here, or maybe we need to build on this and it shouldn't be the teacher's responsibility? No, they got angry at my mom for making them look bad. And like, there was no big but it was the fallout of this is all kind of, emotional vibe, political, whatever. Like nothing actually happened. Like my mom didn't get in trouble. Like she wasn't, censored by the school in any way or anything like that. And she kept doing what she was doing, but it was just that it was made known, it's always, so there's that sort of hung, and that was a couple of years before she retired. So it just sort of hung over between her and the administration, and because it's small town too, so everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everybody's business. It's somebody comes in like, you can't be doing that at the school. Like, shut up, Jack! I saw your wife last weekend drunk at that. It's that sort of situation. So and it becomes awkward all over because you're going to see anybody in this small town. You see the same people all over, and it's kind of like, what? Why would you get mad at me for feeding a child? Why wouldn't you get mad at the fact that the child needs to be fed, you dumb son of a bitch? But that's what it is. It's small town politics.
Yeah. So I discovered you when I was a kid from reading the Ripley's Believe It or Not books, 2006. I remember I got that for Christmas. I think I was in 2nd grade at that time, which is really a long time ago, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's actually that puts you in almost like the second generation, because my first pop-up with Ripley's was in 2000 when I did their TV show.
Wow.
Actually,
yeah.
Recorded with them in 99, and then the show debuted in 2000, which that's the one I get a lot of people are like, oh, that's the first time I saw you. I'm like, well, that's, it was 40 million viewers. So I'm like, the first time almost, I always figured that's going to be the one when somebody says, oh, I saw you when I was a kid. I'm like, it was Ripley's, right? Because nothing was as big as that.
Yeah, I didn't catch you in 2000. I was only probably like 5 months old or a year at
Right,
that
yeah.
point. So yeah, so I got you on the second win for
Yeah,
sure.
who
And
knows?
just
They might have had you in the bassinet, like in front of the TV, watching it. It's a very popular show. That's what I often joke about that with Ripley's, because it's for kids, and it's the reason that they've been so successful over the years. My theory on it is that people get into Ripley's when they're kids. Everybody has their Ripley's phase, and then when they have their own kids, it's like, oh, I remember this. I want to go with you with that, like, because there is something there for an adult. It's not purely kid entertainment. An adult can enjoy themselves at a Ripley's museum, or watching a Ripley show. So it keeps that cycle going on and on like that.
And speaking of, because you mentioned the Ripley's Museum, I was able to go when I was in middle school. I saw the statue of you that was
Yep.
outside there. This was in New York City, in Manhattan.
Yeah, in Times Square.
Apparently, this closed. What happened to this? And what
Yeah,
happened to the
well,
statue?
so do you want I mean, yeah, I can't get in trouble for talking. It's not my job. I didn't sign an NDA, right? So, the Ripley's Times Square was always kind of a vanity project for the kid, because it goes back to Robert Ripley himself, right? It wasn't in the original location, but the idea that there needs to be a Ripley's museum in Times Square, they need to have them there, because that's the flagship. Literally within the company, that's the flagship store, and the one that the corporate office makes all the decisions for. And they use that as a test ground they used it as a test for the statue of me before they decided to make one for every museum. But Ripley's over the years has this weird corporate history where they went franchise model for a while, and then they did this hybrid thing, and now like some of them are franchises and some aren't, and blah blah. The New York one was being handled by this management company, and let me put this politely: I have never met a more inept group of fuck ups in my life than the people that represented this management company at the New York Times Square Ripley. They would send someone with literally no experience in a position to a live event. Like they literally did this to me once at a casino event. They set this woman up. She's an office publicist. Like, she literally like calls people up and copy and paste and send them stuff like that. She has zero experience with any live event or production. Shows up there and she's in charge. And the clusterfuck ensues. And so I wasn't particularly shocked when that one, because it was, like I say, it was a vanity project for the company. It's also really expensive. Times Square real estate is insane, right? And it took COVID to kind of force their hand, but they were always sort of doing it as we need to have this kind of loss leader for brand recognition and those aspects. But they kept shooting themselves in the foot too. Like, so in 2000, when I did the TV show, I originally thought, well, this is it. Like, I'm here. I've made it. I'm with Ripley's, believe it or not. I'm going to tour the museums and do shows in them. Because I was thinking about it the way that it used to be when Robert Ripley did them. Like, the museums used to be basically live theaters on top of museums. Over the years, because you have to pay a performer every day. You don't have to pay the gun that shot Lincoln more than what. You buy it once, you put it on display, and you make money off it forever, right? So they became more display oriented. But their business went down. And it's myself, Todd Robbins, a couple other people that worked with the show that pointed out, they're like, you've lost the human element. The real reason that Ripley's and anything weird in sideshow works is because people want to know about the person, right? You go see CeeLo the Seal Boy, and you immediately start going, well, how does he shave? Well, how does he even buckle his pants? Oh God, how does he masturbate? Right? It's like, but these are all. There's got to be a human question, right? And everybody, it's always sex. It's sex and going to the bathroom with any freak. Any physical freak, and those are the two questions that they always get the most. It's whether it's how you wipe your ass or how do you jerk off, but it's all. But I mean, and you're laughing because look at what a connection that's made in you right now. You're feeling that, aren't you? You're like, yeah, I do want to know that. It's fucking hilarious and it's stupid, but it's like, yeah, we all do. Like, literally, and that's something. That's what I think is beautiful that I've learned from Sideshow is. Some shit affects all of us as human beings. Doesn't matter where in the world, what culture, what color, how you were raised, what religion. But I've gone all around the world. I've done my dumb shit for every possible audience. And there's some things that I see that's not an American reaction or a male reaction or a black reaction or a Chinese. That's a human reaction. And a human reaction to seeing someone who is very physically different almost immediately goes to the bathroom and sex, because those are the two things that we all do, right? That we know we all do. I'm like, I know you got to shit sometime. I just don't know how you're going to wipe your ass without arms, Seal Boy. What the hell's going on, right? and And so when your museum starts just being about, oh, this is Lincoln's hair, this is a shark's tooth, this is like, people start to drop out. The TV show brought the stories back, and this was something that I pitched them earlier. And I had a lot of big successes with them early on, but yeah, I mean, I guess part of it's kind of greed, corporate culture thing around that they had that was going by that. But the other part of it, as I just saw, was you give them an idea. Like I said, there were other people that are involved too. I'm not trying to take sole credit here. Like I mentioned, like Todd Robbins before he's a New York guy that we both pitched them so many ideas, and then we would watch them take our ideas and just do the most half-assed version of it. And then but it was almost like they wanted to fail. Like, have you ever seen somebody do it like fail on purpose, where they're like, I don't really want to try this, but I'll try it, in such a weak way that that's what it felt like they were doing sometimes. They'd be like, hey, how about we do live shows in the lobby? And then they just try and make it. It seemed like they were trying to make it fail. And when it wasn't a huge success, they'd be like, well, see, that's why we don't do it. I'm like, well, you really haven't even tried it yet.
That was definitely disappointing, because when I went to the museum as a kid, I was expecting to see either you there or other acts there, because you're right, it became very display like, and then they had the gift shop, and I was disappointed when I didn't get to see any of you guys there.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is that, and this is one of the things that kind of precipitated my not really working with. I mean, obviously the statues are still there; they still publish photos of it, and I don't have an active relationship. But I don't go out and do like spokesperson type stuff like I used to for them. And part of that was like the gift shop. You brought that's why I'm like, this is Ripley's, believe it or not, and they're in Times Square. Like, I want to go to their gift shop should have some of the coolest shit in the world, right? That you think like, oh, I'm going to find some weird, cool stuff in this gift shop. And you go there and it's candy by the pound and the generic fucking stretchy ball.
The shock pen. I got the shock pen.
Yeah, it's worse than an airport fucking kiosk. And there's nothing really. They've got a couple of things. But I was like, look, you're Ripley's. Like, I mean, I'm not saying don't make a buck. I'm all for making money, right? But I'm also for, it's not even a matter of integrity. It's just a matter of, this isn't cool. This is so generic. You're wasting your potential. You should have stuff, with the Ripley's name on it. You should have cool things in there, right? You should just, whatever that is, like, sideshow props that have been discarded or like used things from shows, have some collector stuff in there. But I'm like, I remember the first time I went to that New York Times Square Ripley's and walked into the gift shop because I wanted to shop, right? I thought, because I love this shit too. That's why I got into it. I want to find some cool souvenirs, stuff to take home. And I'm looking around the gift shop going like, this is crap. Like, who's responsible for this?
That's savage. It definitely is. Yeah, I think I got one of the newest edition books there, and definitely the shock pen, and I think a keychain. They used to make you do photos on like beams in New York City. I remember that.
Oh yeah, the souvenir photos as they walk around. But that's the thing, is like they were always and to this day really still are kind of, they're about the book, the book publishing. The Ripley's annual book and their publishing in general is the real focus. And that's, if you want to get into another sort of like background bullshit with companies, Guinness World Records, right?
Okay.
So Guinness and Ripley's used to be like the Coke and Pepsi, right? One or the other. Each year, they both put out a book for Christmas, right? The big hardcover annual edition. And 1 year Guinness sells more, next year Ripley sells that. They go back and forth and back and forth. Well, there was a time when they were both just publishing companies, right? That was their main thing. And they were fiercely competitive. And so when I first started in the early 2000s, when I first started working with Ripley's, I kind of gradually found this out, like meeting different executives and going to different places and doing stuff for them. And you overhear things and people get talking about it. And I started, at one point, I was pitching the idea of some world records, and Ripley's wasn't really, I didn't get it. And they're like, because they stayed away from it because they didn't want to get compared or overlapped with it. And at one point they did this thing called Ripley's Records. But the problem is, like, Guinness is already the brand name there. But there's a lot of dislike. And so like Guinness didn't like to use people that were on Ripley's, and Ripley's didn't like to do Guinness people if they could avoid it. Right. But really it's a small pool of us that you've got to pick from. So there's always, a certain amount of overlap. But they just didn't like each other to the point where it affected me career-wise. That's the reason I didn't work with Guinness until 2014. And even then, like at this point now, a lot of those old guard execs have aged out. But when I say it, like, they were literally like, the Guinness people were literally like, fuck Ripley's. And the Ripley's people were like, fuck Guinness. And don't you dare go work for them.
It was like the East Coast, West Coast hip
Yeah,
hop.
it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the that was the battle of the weird Christmas books.
Yeah. And you actually were able to, I was going to bring this up, the Guinness World Record, you got that with the weights, with the ears, with the
Right.
most. Yeah. So how did
Yeah.
this work? Because I've seen it online. So how were you able to build up with this? Because I know it's all about building up the tolerance with the reaction, especially
Right.
with the
Well,
swallowing the sword. So get into the weight portion of
with
this.
this, it's like it's a build up, but some people think, oh, like a build up, like it's not a build up in muscle. Like my ears didn't get stronger.
Hmm.
What happened was I was gradually like it's more like a stress test, right? You're lifting, you go, okay, that hurts. Now, as you get used to the sensation, you can handle the sensation more. Like basically it becomes less painful, not because your ears are getting stronger, but because you're getting more comfortable with it. And then over time, you just keep adding weight, you get more and more comfortable. Now, at a certain point, if you start to feel pain, that's your body telling you you've reached your limit. This is what your skin can do. And that is gonna vary from person to person. It's varied for me, like through my lifetime, just the health of my skin and my ears. Sometimes I'm comfortable lifting a huge amount. Sometimes I'm like, even half that feels like it's tearing off my head. But yeah, it's basically just a process of gradually conditioning and working your way up. And so the Guinness record one is funny because they gave me the record for the heaviest weight lifted and spun by the ears because I started, I think it was 2001 maybe. I'd already been lifting beer kegs with my ears. But I started doing helicopter spins because before that I had lifted a bar stool and I would swing it around. That was one of the acts that I debuted with the Jim Rose Circus back in the 90s. And when I came on replacing Mr. Lifto, it was sort of my twist on. He always had his Lifto shuffle where we go back and forth, swinging side to side, and I did full helicopter swings, which actually puts a lot more force and torque on the piercings when you're doing it. And early on, caused me a couple of tears, but I worked up to the beer keg and I got to spinning it, and it was the reason that I have the record for lifted and spun is because they gave somebody else the record for heaviest weight lifted and they didn't want them to and that person worked for them a lot in Europe. They didn't
Okay.
want they didn't want them to lose their record. So instead, they had me do a record for just for spinning, which I'm fine with. And for me, it was that was my signature act and my show closer for a long time. And it's nice to like put a stamp on it and say, yes, it was, because I used to say like pitching, I was like, look, as far as I know, this is a world record. Nobody's ever done this with this amount of weight in history, and that's just sort of the verification of it. And
Hmm.
it's funny, like after that, they're a company that, like a lot of these companies, and I understand people are trying to save money, whatever, but you don't skimp on the product. They're always like, "Hey, come do this, or we'll give you a record for this stunt. We know that you can get this record, right? Do it for us, and then hopefully we'll get you on some TV shows and stuff for it, and they'll pay you." But they never want to pay. So I
No.
was like, look, I got what you got one out of me for free, and not even for free because I did that one on an Italian TV show and the TV show paid me, so I still didn't give them to it for free. But I was like, I got my one off you. I don't need any more for personal satisfaction, so you're gonna have to pay from here on out. And wow, all of a sudden when somebody wanted to get paid, they stopped being interested.
Of course.
I was like,
That's
you guys called me. What the?
So what side are you on now? Are you still doing work with Guinness or Ripley's? What side are you on?
I'm on the side of the check.
The check.
I'm on the side that's holding the check. Somebody wants to write a check. I'm not. There was a period of time where I was like genuinely upset about some of the things that happened with me and Ripley's, but at the end of the day now and where we're at, it's like it's a stupid thing to hang on to, and if they wanted to pay me to do something, as long as the paycheck was right, I would do it. And the same thing for Guinness. I'm like, it's just it's my real thing with them is that I don't like, we've talked a lot about sort of bad things. I don't want you to think that I'm like bad mouth these companies, or like I want people to still enjoy I still enjoy the product, right? And
Yeah.
I just have a different view of it because I've seen how the sausage is made. And I tell these stories so that other performers know. I'm like, look, don't fall for the pitch. Don't fall for the thing I did, which is, and because I love it, I was like, I saw it as a kid. Now I'm going to be on it. Oh, that's great. Oh, hey, by the way, when do we get paid? You're like, oh, you're not getting paid for this. You've already signed the releases. You've already decided to do it. And I was like, oh, it was a weird thing because I was in this place where I had only done a little bit of TV before I did Ripley's, and everything I did beforehand was a very high end professional unionized production where they just told you. this is what you're getting. Right. And if you didn't like it, I mean, theoretically, I could have argued, but these are my first couple of times on TV. I'm just like, okay, whatever you tell me, I get. But I didn't have to ask. Right. I didn't have to say anything. I just went in and it was a given that I was getting paid because this was a, above board union production. And when Ripley's went out, the company that made that show, like they licensed the name from Ripley. So it's actually not the Ripley's company making the TV show. They're just helping supply content. Okay. And this was the late 90s, and it was one of the show one of the first shows that did this thing where they kind of do where now it's become standard, where there's like 30 producers, right? Everybody's a producer. They hire like 30 kids, 30 interns, and they're like, "You're a producer. Give me a segment. Here are some ideas," or find this person. Like, so one of their producers that they had hired like found me and like, we're gonna make the thing, and as soon as he got it, he had to get it approved. Once it was approved, then he got a budget to do all that. But it's done, very on the cheap. And because I didn't speak up at the beginning, it was all just assumed that I was happy to do it for exposure. And I wasn't thinking, I didn't know, because I was just like, oh, well, no, if you do it, you work, they pay you, right? I had been fooled by my good experiences. So then I tell people, I'm like, look, they're big. They are both multi-billion dollar multinational companies. You are their raw material that they make money off of. They're going to try and get you for as cheap a wholesale price as they can, but they can and they must pay for you. Like, they don't do the free work that I did. And yes, I made a good amount of money with them afterwards and whatever, but it was never like, oh, and here's the extra we should have paid you in the beginning. No, watch those releases. Like they own some of my images in perpetuity. Like I'll be long dead and they'll still be publishing a picture of me, which part of me likes that, right? Because like I'm the great Omi, who's a tattooed man who worked with Robert Ripley, who's a big inspiration for me. Like I know of him in large part due to Ripley's books and things like that. So, I like that now I'm going to be in the books with him for the rest of all time, but I'm not getting paid for that, right? Because I didn't, and they'll never offer. It's just, I kind of, tell people, I'm like, if you're going to do it, do it. It's worth it. And yeah, it's significant, but, do it eyes open and, don't go in starry-eyed. I think they catch, because a lot of us, especially in sideshow and like fringe variety stuff like this, we don't expect success. Like I literally never expected 100th of the success that I've had, right? My best case scenario was I make enough doing this that I don't live in the street, but I'm happy. Right. I'm actually, I've done pretty well for myself. I'm a homeowner. I'm essentially debt free, happily married. All that, I'm really thankful and happy that all these things happen, but that's not my expectation. And that is very much not what anyone getting into sideshow should expect. I got plenty of friends that live in cars, live in vans, tour full times. Now they ain't hating life. Right. But it's not, you're not going to get that necessarily.
No, you're right. And it relates in so many ways with the whole industry now and just how the entertainment, especially with the strikes that were going on in the film and the TV world, which is crazy. And that this is something I did want to bring to you, because you always say that you can't beat crazy. You can't outperform crazy. That's one of your phrases. What are your thoughts on social media and everyone chasing clout and doing the most for extremes now?
This is the 53-year-old man in me coming out right now, right? It's fucking scary in a lot of ways. Because I think the thing I always we're talking about, don't compete. I tell other performers, don't compete with crazy, and one of the reasons I don't do stuff like I don't do a lot of pin cushion stuff anymore, like putting skewers to my cheeks on that, because the number of people that appreciate that as art are not enough people that's not enough audience members to make money at a show, right? The most people who are cheering for that are people that just want to see you either they want to see you hurt yourself, or they identify with you because they hurt themselves and they need help. They don't need to watch your show. They need to get help, right? I've had people like after shows going like, oh man, I love when you put the skewer through your face like that. Dude, I'm just like you. I don't give a fuck either. I literally had to do, he pulled out a fucking knife and cut his arm in front of me. Like, dude, what the fuck are you doing, dude? That's not art. That's not entertainment. That's you need some fucking help. And I am not qualified to do it. And I don't want to, but I mean, I want to go find you a therapist right fucking now. Right. So when it draws that to you, right? There's there are different types, and you know what? I always think of Ron White because he's got a great bit on this. But it's like you can't lump all crazy into one category. There are many, many flavors of crazy, right? And there's some fun crazy, and then there's some fucked up crazy. Right? It's like what kind of crazy are you? And like when you do those acts, you almost immediately start to attract the wrong kind of crazy around you, and no matter how far you're willing to go as an artist, I'm willing to, hurt myself to an extent, like get hooks put in my back and hang from them. It's actually a fun, ecstatic experience when it goes well for me, right? Like, it's always like, yes, I am damaging my body, I'm hurt, like, but I'll never be able to outdo someone who's literally self-harming themselves, right? Someone who is committing acts of self-harm will go to far more extremes than I will as an artist, or even as someone who likes to explore their own limits. Like, that's how I got into doing the pincushion, was I was like, how tough am I, right? But then you start to realize, you're like, hey, wait, I can control this to a certain extent. And then you start to wonder, well, how far can I control it? And then it becomes an exploration. And it's like, there are people who understand that. And then there are people who are just like, bleed for me. And like, you don't, but the former is great, but the latter is who you're going to run into. And that's what I see. And we bring this over to the social media and the clout chasing stuff like that. There's always going to, unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, there's a cycle, right? And this is just the latest version of it. But there are always people who don't understand the difference between good attention and bad attention. And they think that any attention is good. The whole no press is bad press. And if people misunderstand it a lot of time, that doesn't mean that bad press is good. That means when there's no press, when people aren't talking about you, that is bad press. That's what that expression actually is supposed to mean. It's not about, if somebody says something bad about you, it's okay. No. You're not supposed to want people to give you bad press. You're supposed to be worried that nobody's talking about you. It's no press together is bad press together. Like, it drives me nuts that people say that back to them. Like, you should know that's not true. Just look at the world. Of course, bad press is fucking bad press. But yeah, it's the. And the thing that makes this difficult too is that when you're young, that's the only time you can play that game, right? Like, I could not, not that I would want to, right? You're supposed to be old enough to know better, right? But when you're a kid, that is the one time when I actually, and I say I probably bear a little bit of responsibility by encouraging people to do dumb shit. I am an instigator. And I'm like, if you're young, like, especially when I'm working with like younger circus kids that are like in their 20s, right? If they come to me with a really bad idea, I'll tell them, I go, that's a really bad idea. If I was you, I'd do it. As soon as possible, because you can't ruin your life. There's a certain age where before a certain age, it's almost impossible to ruin your life unless you accidentally die, right? I know, people who've come back from being meth addicts, people who've come back from, going to prison, doing horrible things like that. You can turn your life. There's an entire society trying to help you turn your life around if you fuck it up. So as long as you've got enough time left to live, you can come back from almost anything. So, I mean, yeah, it sucks and it's dumb, but also they're kids and we were kids. And I remember I wouldn't have listened to me, right? When I was 17, if somebody who was 50 told me not to do something that I wanted to do, if it wasn't like my grandparent, fuck you, I'm doing it, right? It's the folly of youth is perpetual. There's always going to be a group of people coming around, just like say, fucking around and finding out. It's just, it's up to the adults in the room to try and make sure they don't go past the point of no return. And so, right. That's to me, this other, like, I hate it when people shit on younger generations because it's your own goddamn fault. Like, don't bitch to me about kids today who fucking raised them. Exactly. Who's not there? Yeah. If you're worried about kids on social media chasing clout, all right, they're your fucking kids. I don't have any kids, but I'm looking at every time I hear someone complaining about kids today, it's somebody, at least, 30 or older. So my generation or the generation that, like, these are your kids, people. Fucking do something about it. If anyone can fix this, it's the fucking parents. They're the ones dropping the ball. That's why I was like, look, I'm not a parent. This is not my fucking fault. Parents need to clean up their own fucking shit.
They do. They really need to now more than ever. And you mentioned being instigator before. Who is this president that held up a photo of you and said we can't have our kids be a model after you? Was this a candidate? Who was this that held up a?
Oh, that was I believe you're talking about the Illinois state senator who
Okay, that was what it
he
was.
he was the first person to introduce a legal ban on tongue splitting.
Mm.
And he did it after seeing me on Ripley's. He was a former dentist. So he claimed that he knew what he was talking about, which, you know, your average dentist knows jack shit about oral surgery, especially surgery on the tongue. So, you know, whatever. He's claiming expertise where he doesn't really have it. But yeah, it was a straight up, it was a political play. And you know what, in a certain way now I look back at it and I go, that is actually kind of a milestone for me, like lifetime and careers. When you get to the point where someone wants to use you as a political pawn, right? I'm like, well, I've achieved something, right? I definitely am notable enough as a person that someone can try to exploit my image and my story. And that's what he was doing, trying to get some attention for himself by trying to ban tongue splitting.
Ugh. And you were the first one to get this surgery done.
I was the first for the surgical. Yeah, I am the second successful tongue splitting in history. The first surgical method, and I helped develop the surgical method. I actually did a bunch of research myself, found an oral surgeon, consulted with him, and we kind of decided on the final way that he would go through the procedure. And he did it on me. So yeah, I'm the first successful surgical tongue splitting, the second successful tongue splitting history. It's a woman named Dustin Allors did hers herself, and what's funny is because it wasn't very well documented. Again, this is the mid '90s, so it was kind of like there were so many urban legends. Like every time I spent a good year like hunting down all the info I could on tongue splitting before I said, okay, I'm just going to figure it out on my own. And it was always like, oh, somebody saw someone here, whatever like that. And it's funny, like I could never verify her story until after I had done mine, and then I figured out. And then you know, she and I have since met. This, you know, because this is all shit 97 when I did mine. So you know, I was also 25, 29 years ago, or no, 28. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we've said and sort of sorted out the history, but at the time when everything was happening, like nobody knew. And the internet was still sort of, was at a point where like, I remember I actually bought my first digital camera specifically so I could take pictures of my tongue to give them online. It was so hard to get pictures on the internet back then. You just, you know, way before YouTube, before Google.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane. And just this whole situation, especially with the Teflon, because this is all Teflon. Worst thing,
Right.
vomiting from this.
The ridges over my eyes are 5 pieces of Teflon that are put in their swords. Now, when these were done in '98, they were the largest initial implants that Steve Hayworth, who's kind of the godfather of 3D implants, had ever done. You know, now they're actually kind of tiny. It's funny, like I'll see some dude have a giant horn or like his arm or, you know, a big devil horn, something like that. And I'll be like, man, this used to be as big as you could go.
You're the OG in this, man. I'm telling you, you're the OG.
Yeah, this, the other thing is that too is that these being Teflon is now very, very rare because most implants these days are silicone because you can make a smaller incision, compress the implant, and get it in with less trauma to the tissue. But there, that means that your implant kind of feels like a gummy bear under your skin. It's squishy because it's silicone, whereas mine are harder than bone.
Wow. That's crazy. Is there still, because I always wonder, is this still a work in progress? Because I know there were so many hours with the tattoos that you were in to getting tattooed. And do you have to ever go and get it redone? Because I've heard that tattoos fade over time.
Right. Oh yeah, and there's definitely been some wear on that. I sort of made a small promise to myself early on where I was like, look, touch-ups are inevitably going to be a thing, but I wanted to try and complete the suit before I started doing touch-ups. Like I don't want to get in this pattern of like, oh, let's go back and touch that, or let's go fix this, let's change this. Like, no, get the base coat down at least, right? And then maybe we'll go back and figure it out. So yeah, it took me 25 years to the month. I had my first tattoo session in January of 1994. And in January of 2019, I had the last 3 empty scales on my thigh filled in. I actually saved those scales for the tattoo convention here in Austin so that we could specifically close it out right then. And yeah, so it was about probably between 600 and 700 hours of tattooing over the course of 25 years. My plan was in 2019, I was like, okay, I'll get these last 3 scales filled in And then I'm good. I'm like, I'm going to take a break. And I've had ideas, I'm constantly making adjustments and ideas and notes about what I might do in the future about it. But I was like, I'm going to take a year off from getting tattooed. Just kind of let it settle in. Then I'm like, okay, I am at a point where this could be a stopping point. I could be done, right? Because not that there's nothing else I want to do, but everything I said I was going to do, I've done now, right? I have completed my full body tattoo. I have my horns. I have my teeth. I have my tongue. There's nothing on my original checklist, wish list that's possible that I haven't done. So it was nice to just be like, okay, cool. That's 2019, right? 2020, the world shuts down.
Yeah.
Right? And the last thing on my mind is like, oh, it's been a year. I should go get tattooed, right? And I absolutely didn't think about it. In fact, I've been writing a book about the 25-year process of specifically of just the tattooing that this year I've been spent a lot of time working on it. So I've been revisiting, all this. And yeah, I got to, at March of this year, it was the 10th anniversary of the shop that I currently get tattooed at. And so I performed at their anniversary party. And while we were setting up for the party, a friend of my friend, the owner, comes up. He goes, "Hey man, I was just wondering, like, what else you got left to do?" And I wasn't even there. I just went, "I ain't got to do shit. I'm done." And I said it without thinking. Of course, as soon as I said it, I was like, "Wait, what the fuck am I saying? Am I done?" Like I haven't, but because I hadn't thought about it, and then like I said, in writing the book, I went, you know what? For 25 years of my life, it was always a thought in my head. When am I going to fill in this? When am I going to fill in that? Every time I looked in the mirror, there was an empty piece, right? There was something that I had to like, let's get this filled in. When am I going to have time to do it? Because part of the reason it took so long was because I got successful touring and performing. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to be, I didn't want to have a half-healed tattoo, on camera for a TV shoot, or, having to be in a 10-hour plane ride while I'm throbbing with a fresh tattoo. Now, so I was only getting tattooed in between gigs, which slowed it down, but it was always a thought in my head. And then I sort of realized, like, wait, I've gone 5 years where I haven't even had to think about this. Like my entire, it's not a huge difference, but it's a perspective on the world and how I spend my time and how I do things that has changed. And so now I'm kind of like, I do have some touch-ups that I want to do and some other stuff I've talked with my artist, but I'm still kind of figuring out, I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know when I'm going to go back in, because it's not that same drive right now. It's if I want to, or if I get around to it, that's fine. Before, I felt like I had to finish, right? It was almost, it was pathological, but by choice. Like I had made a decision when I decided I was going for a full body tattoo. From that moment on, it was always my driving thought was finish this tattoo.
Mm. And this all sparked too being called the childhood name Lizard Boy. And
oh no, I never got caught. That's it.
Or was it? Well, it was something boy, right? And you had to change.
But it was so. I think what you're thinking of, and this had nothing to do with childhood here. It was a childhood friend that I was talking to on the phone right after I got, well, not right after, but like a week after I got my tongue split, and because he was asking if I had it done, thinking that he'd be able to tell there'd be a difference in my speech. He'd be able to hear it. And I was like, no, I had it done like a couple of weeks ago, and everything's good. I'm healing up right, like that. And as we were getting off the phone, I said something to him. He's like, yeah, whatever, Snake Boy, have a good day. Snake Boy. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't really a childhood inspiration for Lizardman. But there's a lot of things that were there. Like I have pictures that I drew when there's a picture I drew that my mom saved that I have from when I was 4 years old that I don't remember if it's supposed to be anyone in particular, but it's a bunch of people and they all have sharp teeth and forked tongues. Like I drew a bunch of like lizard people as a kid, right? And and all very like cliched stuff that you could guess anyway. Like I love Godzilla movies. Mm-hmm. The V television series was one of my favorite TV series in junior high. I was there for that. And again, it's 80s Gen Xer. Like that's when conspiracy series that I learned about the reptilians and all that shit, like all that stuff was fucking funny and cool. And that probably, is not even probably, it's definitely part of the influence, right? Mm-hmm. But, it's just that was the stuff that I keyed onto.
Have you ever seen the movie? Because I heard that this was controversial. It's a 1932 film, Freaks. Have you seen this before?
Oh yeah. Freaks by Todd Browning. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? Because it really took a while for it to be a accepted term within the 60s.
Well, it's so yeah. I have Freak
tattooed.
tattooed on my chest, right? Because it's, for me, it's a title, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's the reclamation of it, or the change in usage in the 60s, right? It was, freak the establishment, the hippies wanted, it was a disruptive term. You were proud to be a freak, proud to be unusual. And in the sideshow, there was the ADA stuff going on with, whether or not it was exploitive. But the movie Freaks itself, and that movie has a wild, there's a reason that's a cult film. And it's not just the subject matter, it's the story of getting that movie made and how it got released and around. The movie is great. Like, I'm a big fan of it. That's a huge influence on me. I can remember getting that movie on VHS from the cult section of the video store and watching the hell out of it. And it features, it's some of the best footage we have of, actual performers of that time period. I one of my best friends in the world and professionally is Shorty Dangerously. He was a half man, and Johnny Eck is in that film, has a major role in Freaks. And Johnny Eck was sort of he's the half man superstar. He's like he's almost a sex symbol. He's so handsome, women coming on. You have Otis, the human cigarette factory, the human worm, the armless, legless guy that rolls a cigarette in his mouth and lights it. So I love that movie. I think it's great. I feel like it's what it is that movie has set the bar for a lot of pop culture cliches and stereotypes about circus and sideshows. Like that movie created the image that people think of, right? Sort of like, what's it? Is it Liberty Valance? I'm trying to remember the Western. The whole thing is like, don't print the truth, print the legend, right? That's the legend. Yeah. Though in the movie, don't make a movie about the real sideshow and circus. Make a movie that creates a legend of the sideshow and circus. And I actually really love the fact that part of that movie, part of the reason it gets me is in the story, like, the freaks get their revenge. Like, they win out. They're like, you don't get over on it. Like, they're not that's one of the things that makes that movie so great. Is like, the freaks aren't the victims, right? The freaks aren't the hapless victims. They're not, complicit and whatever. No, the freaks win, right? the freaks get their revenge.
They do. They do. And hey, we may need another uprising to take over the current administration.
Well, I mean, my worry is that it will take an uprising. What we actually need is some stability, which and that's, as funny. I was talking to someone earlier today, and I was like, the problem is that everybody doesn't know. Nobody knows which way to jump because nobody can be trusted, and we're not getting clear and concise messages. Which it is that I'll say this about freak shows and sideshows. So one of the things that has happened with every freak show or sideshow that I've worked with, it's been organized for a while. I talk about like Brothers Grimm, House of Poppin', Jim Rose sideshow, Traveling on My Own, Coney Island sideshow. The people that get brought backstage, the people that see the real world back there. One of the things that I've heard every single time is, this is so normal and boring. It's so organized and so put together. Like, what do you guys do? And like, it's because our lives and our performances are so chaotic. We need this other stuff to be stable, right? It's a concept that comes up in other places too, about having to be twice good, right? And so they was like, if you're the wrong color, not being bad isn't enough. You've got to be good. You got to go that extra step, right? Well, with a freak show, we already have enough challenges in front of us. So we can't have the additional challenge of being disorganized drama queens, right? That can't happen. You're going to find that, the backstage at Coney Island in New York, or, if you get to come backstage on a House of Poppin' tour, like that, you're going to find people back there very focused on doing their jobs because, well, number one, our jobs are dangerous. We're doing stunts, right? So there's a certain amount of that responsibility and focus comes in others. But yeah, people expected to be like, oh, these people, they don't give a fuck. But if we were like that, we wouldn't have any success at all, right? We work twice as hard for regular success. We don't mind it that much because we enjoy what we do.
When did you first start at Coney Island? Because I remember when I was a kid, I went there and unfortunately didn't get to see you. I remember seeing your picture, and I just remember being small in there and just hot as hell. I know one of the performers did a fire stunt. You thought the whole place was going to catch up.
Dude, that place was a sweat bot. I you know what? I've heard that since the latest redesign that they've done something for the AC or whatever like that. But I think the first time I went there, because I was never a part of the regular cast.
Okay.
But I would go there and I would do guest spots and I would do like residencies and I'd be there for a week, 2 weeks or more, like that. I think the first time I went was 2001 or 2002. But yeah, there would be, my banner would be there the whole time. And what's funny is I would always sell pitch cards, traditional and sideshow. You sell pitch cards, just a postcard of yourself. You can autograph them, whatever, a couple extra bucks. Well, I would always leave a huge stack in the Coney Island gift shop so that they would just keep selling. And whenever I would come back through, they'd have a little cigar box, a bunch of ones, and they're like, "Hey man, you sold some postcards while you were away."
Yeah, I never got to see you perform. How often do you usually come back? Do you usually come back?
Well, now I haven't been back since COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a while there where it was pretty regularly that I was just getting to come through. And it would just work out, but there was never kind of a set thing. Like I say, like sometimes I'd come back for the Congress of Curious People. Sometimes I'd be in town for the Neptune Parade. Just whenever it worked out.
Mm-hmm. And you've done all kinds of things as far as performances and just being a part of roller coaster rides. Did they ever have you do anything within like the Spookorama or the Cyclone? Because there were one thing you did something under a roller coaster at Six Flags, I think.
Oh, I think what you might be thinking of there is that I did Six Flags Great Adventure in Jersey in 2016, and we do. Well, I mean, whenever I've worked at a number of different themes, very often at theme parks, you're put right next to a roller coaster because they want you to be a distraction for the people that are stuck online. But the one that the reason the Six Flags would say that is that we would do our shows on a stage that they built for us next to a roller coaster. And then I would go back to my trailer that was under a roller coaster. So like one of their newer coasters that was built like near the wall of the park, they used to have like trailers out there for seasonal employees and all this. So they offered us that instead, because the nearest hotel was like 30 minutes away and it would have been a commuter day. I was like, I don't give a shit. Give me a little, they're like the little FEMA trailers, right? It's like 2 bedrooms and a kitchenette in the middle. They gave me one to myself. I'm like, all right, I'm fine. I'm good. But yeah, we'd go back at night. And depending on when we closed our last show, the roller coaster might be running for an hour or two more. And then in the mornings, the safety crews come on. And it actually reminded me of the brief time that we lived on the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. My family, we were put in housing right next to the one of the runways. And at that point, that was a Strategic Air Command base. And they had FB-111s 24 hours a day. They just did a rotation. Like they, 2 would go up, and then they'd have 4 up, 2 would come down, 2 would go up. And so all day long, 24 hours a day, there are these FB-111s, and we were right along that. And it was just like, shit. It gave me flashbacks to that because I was there with the roller coaster every night and every morning. I get back into my trailer, just like, oh, here it comes.
So did they make you ever do anything like that at Coney Island? Like be a part of any of the rides there?
Oh no! I mean, I would go around when you're in Coney, and especially if you're guessing like that. I would go back when Dick Ziggin was running the theater. Like he'd always be like, "Hey, let's go down and say hello to so and so. He's been at these bumper cars for 50 years. Or his grandfather did it." So I would get trotted around and do the rounds, and do the shake the hands, kiss the babies.
Of course, everyone knows who you are out there in Coney Island, and to the point to where you were getting on tour with these bands, Disturbed, Slipknot. So how did you really first get the opportunity to really cross over and start going on tour? And then you also did some background. You hosted morning radio,
right? Well, so I did with the tours about like Slipknot, Disturbed. That was the Jägermeister music tour. So I was the host of the Jägermeister music tour from 2003 to 2008, and that happened because I had worked with Sobe when they were still a private company. So before PepsiCo bought them, they did a lot of grassroots stuff. They were one of the first sponsors of any type, but the first big beverage sponsors for the X Games. And they were kind of ahead of their time. And one of the guys that was there became sort of their athlete manager, and he spun off his own business into it. I presented Travis Pastrana his first endorsement check in a ceremony from Sobe, like I say, like back before they were PepsiCo. This is in the 90s. And anyway, there's a guy that was at a party with the Sobe guys that I performed at. Like he was a friend of theirs, so he saw me. He ended up being a friend of the dude who started the Jägermeister music tour. This guy named Rick Seiler. And Rick was just kind of openly music. He's like, yeah, we got this tour coming up. I want to get someone or somebody to host it. We want to make it an event. We don't just want it to be a bunch of bands. We're looking for somebody that can really bring us a video like that. And this dude just, thank God, this guy Bryn just said, fuck it, I'm gonna answer this guy. I don't know this guy. He's gonna mouth out. He's like, you should get the Lizardman. I saw him at this Sobe party last week. He does all this crazy. And they're like, what? And they're like, okay. I get an email from Rick. He's like, hey, somebody brought you up. And yeah, I didn't know any of that happened until much later. I got filled in. But what happened was I got the email from Rick, and he was, we're looking to do a tour. And I'm like, this is great. This is something that I've being a host, a live event host, like a ringmaster for the thing, and working acts in is exactly the sort of thing I wanted to do at the time. So I kind of sketched out an idea of how I would open the show, close the show, bring the bands on, how we would work in the Jägermeister branding and really like make it a good, make sure that they got their money's worth out of this whole operation, because that's what it is, right? It's just a big ad. It's basically your job is to make sure people drink more Jägermeister. So, I had a plan for that. And I connected every sideshow act I did, I would connect in some way to, doing it. Even if it was just like, holy shit, can you believe I did that? Do a shot, right? So that gave me the opportunity. Yeah. In 2003, I did my first tour with them. 2004, we had our headliners were Slipknot and then Slayer. Then 2005 to 6, we did an overlapping tour with Disturbed. We had Alter Bridge was in there. Typo Negative, Hatebreed. You see, I got to tour with a lot of just incredible bands that that was the other thing about it. I was like, I left Universal Studios in Florida to do those tours because I had gotten a gig where I was performing at Halloween. Yeah, Horror Nights, right. And I did that in 2001, 2002, and then I got that email about the 2003 tour, and I went out there, and I was like, it's metal tour, it's where I want to be. And I was a Jaeger drinker at the time. I was like, yeah, everything is perfect. So, Halloween Horror Nights was like, we want you to do one more year, and I'm like, they're like, oh, we want to get you come back, and I'm like, I'm gonna go play Rockstar. Like I didn't really take a pay cut, but the first couple of years I did. Yeah, I made less money than I would have there, but it was so worth it. It's 5 year, 10 tours in 5 years. It was a spring tour and a fall tour every year, national, and like we talked about before, the small town I came from. Every night I was performing in front of more people that lived in the county I grew up in.
It's crazy. You've spoken about it before with how volatile the crowds can be. So what was the most volatile crowd that you were perform in front of?
Hands down, if you're going to be an MC or, someone and introducing someone on stage. And this is why too, because I do stand up, I always love the fact that stand-up comedians, especially back in the 2000s, would talk forever about how it was never go on a rock festival. Never did it. It's because they were trying to do their stats. Like, yeah, it's not a comedy club. Nobody came here for your joke. They like joke. Like, I used to tell a lot of jokes. I did a very comedy oriented show, but I did jokes about drinking and with the crowd, and it was crowd work at the most, right? And it wasn't. I'm not saying I'm a great comic writer, but they were approaching it like a comedy set. I'm like, yeah, if you do the wrong thing in the wrong place, it doesn't go well. Like rock crowds, especially crowds at a concert, like a Slayer concert, don't want that. They want you to keep some energy going. They are a monster, right? They are that crowd is a beast. You get 5,000 to 10,000 Slayer fans. That is a riot waiting to happen. So I'm like, my job is to keep you guys focused and your energy up until the band starts playing, because I know that's the only thing you want. Kerry King actually he joked about me with it right from the beginning of the tour. He told me, he goes, how long you think till you get slayered? And I'm like, what do you mean slayered? He goes, give it time. Give it time. It's going to happen. You're going to go out there one night, because he'd seen it happen to other people introducing them over the years a million times. You walk out there, you try and talk to the crowd, and they just start chanting Slay, and they won't shut up. They won't give it up. They will literally chant at you for 10, 15 minutes, the entire changeover. Rather than let you do your act, they will scream at it. I got Slayer a couple of times, but I feel like I always won them by a little bit, because I would just join in with them. Right? I'd be like, okay, yeah, let's scream their name. Fuck it. They're why we're here. Let's go with it. But yeah, sometimes it'd be like a local radio DJ where they come in and they told the DJ they could introduce the band. I'm like, dude, if he wants to take the bullet, that's all great. I'll just go out there and do my shtick and then introduce him, and he can introduce the band. But I'm like, yeah, anytime you try and force something on them, like most metal shows, this is a general rule for it, but I think Slayer is the one that from my experience, they were the most like, hey, if you give us the slightest provocation, the slightest reason not to like you, we're just going to chant their name till you go away.
Would you have done Woodstock?
Oh, I mean, I would have, yeah, if they'd asked me, yeah.
Watch the place burn to the ground.
Oh, dude, I mean, I'm trying to, well, like which time, right? Didn't it burn
99.
Twice? Yeah, okay, yeah. Like, oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, because it was was 94 was when the fence. I'm trying to remember because I confused 99 and 94 a lot because in 94 I was living in Plattsburgh and that was the one where the fences and everything came down. Like I had a bunch of buddies at the bar that I hung out with. Like literally we were sitting there drinking. They got in the car and drove down. And the next afternoon I saw them on MTV, like talking to reporters as they went through the broken fences. I was like, oh shit, maybe I should have gone.
Yeah, Woodstock's great. Crowds can definitely be crazy. And there was also too, because this was big, and this was actually my introduction to hip hop as like a baby. Nelly was huge at the time. They were playing Nelly in between the concerts. People wanted to hear Nelly.
Oh yeah, oh, so it's like it's house music. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Wow. Did you have any encounters with hip hop artists throughout your time?
Oh, so Sydney Frank Importing, who's actually the company that actually handles Jägermeister in America, so that's who I was actually working for. They're also Grey Goose was originally a Sydney Frank product. They sold it to Bacardi, but there were Grey Goose tours. I didn't host them, but a lot of the same production crew worked on them, and I would go out and visit them. So they did Bone Thugs and Harmony,
okay,
and they also sponsored someone. Snoop wasn't on the tour, but it was somebody that like his name was in it. It was like Snoop Dogg presents somebody, or somebody of. So there are little things like that. I've gotten to meet a couple of. I worked with. I'm blanking his name now. Oh, Funkmaster Flex.
Okay, the DJ for Hot 97.
Yeah, I played a party for Sobe and the entertainment was me and Funkmaster Flex.
Wow, that had to be fire.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. Dude. His fucking drummer was amazing. Like, and he came over and like shook my because they watched my show, and I'm coming off stage, and their crew is setting up the last little bit of stage we on. The drummer comes over, he's like, "Man, it was great." He shakes my hand, and I don't know, like if you ever see like old school, like leather mitt, his hands were so like I touched his hand, I was like, "Holy fuck, dude!" Like I could put you in a sideshow. You literally have leather gauntlet hand. Like, but they were cool to figure out. Like he actually called me back out. Like during his set, he called me back out. He was like, "I got to see that shit up close. Give me back." Yeah, I haven't done a lot of like actual performance with hip hop artists, but I've run into and also at festivals. So okay. I got to meet Snoop Dogg once. I'll give you my Snoop Dogg story. I was at the Dallas Edge Fest. So it's the Edge radio station. And this was early 2000s in Dallas. I don't even know if that's still the station, right? But they're doing Edge Fest in Dallas. And I was there at Sobe's promotional tents doing sideshow stuff. And I had a little pet snake. I had a green snake named Cricket that I had trained to crawl up my nose, down the back of my throat, and out my mouth. So I had this snake crawling through my head. And I'm doing it. And while I'm doing it, there's all the kids in the festival. And there's just these two massive guys that are so big they stand at well over 6 foot, muscular, big ass dudes like that. And I'm like, who the hell are those guys? I made some joke about like, is this an NFL recruitment camp or something like that? Well, it turns out they were both for basically NFL washouts, but they were part of Snoop Dogg's security. And they had wandered over to see what was going on. They came over and they're like, you got to meet Snoop. He has got to see this shit. So I'm like, of course, I'm like, all right, cool. Let's fucking go. So we go back to where the buses are all corralled at Edge Fest like that. And, the two of us, the first guy pops up there, walks up, goes through it. I'm like waiting, like, wait, call. Wait, find the protocol. And the second dude's like, yep, come on. And I walk up and they go up. And if you ever got up the two stairs, they had the front curtain closed, right? And so part of that, as I stick my head through, I'm looking and I see all the way back to the back of the bus. It's wide open. And Snoop is sitting right there in the middle of the back lounge couch, right? And there's people I can't really see. I see their leg like here like that. And he just looks up and he looks down the bus and he's looking and like logged on it. And he goes, who the fuck is this green? And I'm not going to say the word. Right. And then his boys that had brought me back there were like, Snoop, this is the Lizardman. And they start talking all this shit like. But I don't know what was going on in the back line. Like he never got he said something similar. He was like, "Oh shit, that's crazy." He's like, "I need a minute," whatever like that. And then somebody who else was back there like shut that door. So I was going about that, so it wasn't a good time. We waited for like 5-10 minutes, whatever it was. They grabbed me a beer out of the front cooler, and eventually I was like, "Guys, as much as I really, really do want to be here, I am working. I need to go back to my stage and back to doing stuff and all this." So I tell you that was my moment with Snoop.
Oh, that's legendary. That's hilarious. That's unbelievable. Who is this green?
Yep.
Because I can imagine it in his voice, which is
Oh
crazy.
yeah, you can hear him saying.
Yeah. Unbelievable. No, that's legendary, man. I mean, you've been a part of a lot, and just everything that you've done, and especially with musicians, and it's crazy. So I remember I touched on the education part a little bit, but what made you kind of go more into philosophy? Because you wanted to do ethics at one point.
Right. Well, if we go back to like when I first started thinking about going to school and what am I going to do and what else, and like I said, like, 16, 17, 18, like thinking lightly about military options at one point, whatever. And I did really, really well in school. And I was in a very small rural school. So academically, I was a big fish in a small pond. Right. And I checked a lot of the right boxes for applications. So I was like, oh, let's take this kid from this poor rural county in upstate New York and give him an education, like give him a scholarship. And so yeah, I at first I thought I was going to do physics, and that's more when because I was good at physics and I liked it. I still do, but it's more of a hobby sort of thing. As I started thinking about it, and as I got more serious in my thinking, I started, I don't want to say I grew up because I was a fucking idiot 10 years after when I was 27. But when I was 17, I did have a couple of smart moments, at least in thinking in terms of my future, was where I was like, okay, yeah, the military is not going to be a good fit. And I also started thinking about the science. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with it? I started to actually ask myself the question of what am I going to do with my life? And the strategy I sort of hit on was I said, okay, look around you and see look at old people around you and like, who seems happy? Like who's in good shape, who's doing all right, because that's the sort of life that's the life you're going to emulate, right? You're like, oh, you look at that, you're like, oh, they are broken and depressed. Whatever they did, I don't want to do that, right? I don't want that job. And I thought more generally, and I was like, well, I like science, whatever, but if I do physics, I'm like, realistically, even if I'm really successful, I end up working in a lab, I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to like that. But I didn't have a lot of I had a lot of self-confidence in ways I shouldn't have, but I didn't have a lot of self-confidence artistically yet at that point. Right now, I thought I was a genius, but I was really worried that if I said something, people would expose me to not being a genius. Right? And so I kept a lot of my art ideas to myself for fear of them just being immediately ripped to shreds because they weren't good enough. But I moved to philosophy because out of physics, I started getting into more theoretical physics. So that got me I was like, okay. And one of the things I liked about physics is that it's foundational, right? No matter what you're talking about, at some point, physics is relevant, right? If you're talking about chemistry, that's just physics of that, right? If you're talking about what you're doing, physics is going to come into play. So that's fundamental. Then I was like, well, wait, physics is simply a form of philosophy. That is where we got our physics from. We came up with a philosophical method of investigation in order to produce physics. So I'm going to go a step further. I'm always trying to get back to that basic level of thinking, because I always sort of figured like if you can start from there, right? I think that's just, that sort of common sense wisdom idea. Like you start from the beginning, like let's get to the actual source and we'll work from there, because otherwise we're always going to be missing whatever comes before it. And yeah, philosophy, but I started looking at it from a practical, like, what do you do with a philosophy degree? Right. Like I was like, I had already figured out from my little bits of investigation, and I was very much a bookworm. Like I had started reading a lot of the texts that I would be assigned in college before I got there. And I was like, yeah, I am going to like philosophy. I do want to discuss ideas. This is what I want to kind of go after. But I'm like, yeah, how do you monetize this? Right. I'm 18. I was a little more capitalistic, I think, in my thinking generally back then too, where I was like, yeah, there's got to be a payday, right? There's got to be, I was like, I want to be rich enough to go live in the woods and never see anyone again. That's what I want, right? I want to make at least enough money so I can be a philosopher that doesn't have to talk to people if he doesn't want to. So one of the main sort of avenues of monetizing your philosophy degree is ethics, specifically biomedical ethics, especially at that time in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. That was a hot, a hot field for philosophy because, and I mean, it still is today, or I mean, it should never not be, because it is building the framework that, doctors and surgeons will then use for making medical decisions, And if that doesn't come from a well-established place of, values and logic, then you're just sort of adrift. You're in mad scientist world. It's people want to talk about, like ethics matter. They really do. They determine how things go. I mean, it's, and in biomedical ethics, they especially matter because when you're talking about medicines that are going to be used on people, you're talking about people's actual lives. And the fate and not just the fate of their lives, but the quality of their lives will ultimately be determined by the ethical philosophy driving that medical research.
Mm-hmm. No, that is interesting, and I definitely think that you made the right decision because it's worked out for you. Hey, it's worked out for you in so many
Exactly.
ways.
Yeah. I mean, you can't. I can't argue with the results.
No, you can't. I mean, lots of success, and I think what's so amazing about you is that you've been able to turn this career not only into with the sideshow, but doing stand up. You've been able to reinvent yourself so many different times. That's something that people may not speak about. As far as like what I hear when I've done my research and just knowing about you is that the reinvention and just expansion that you brought to your brand.
It's bringing out different sides,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like the that's going to be a natural thing for anyone who's engaged in a creative pursuit or arts like that. Like over time, you're going to want to try and do things the same. You do the same thing. You do you, but you do you a little differently, right? So it's like, yeah, I want to do things more conversationally and funny. That's more of a stand-up thing. Or okay, this will be really good for a big rock concert if I want to make big spectacle like that. But it's still just me. Like, I mean, that's why I think when I hear reinvention, I'm like, it's not so much a reinvention, but it's a reinvention to the audience, right? Because it's the audience experiencing you in a different way. And I mean, again, like I mentioned before about not ever expecting or thinking I would have any sort of level of success. The fact that I've been able to, that I've been lucky enough to enjoy that people have been like, oh, hey, we liked you when we just thought you were a weirdo and, a weirdo bartender who was tattooing himself green. You were kind of cool and genuine. You're like, oh, we're going to hang out with you when you did the rock show stuff. That was great. We liked you as a rock show host guy yelling and screaming and, wow, let's all guys. And then you're like, oh, and then you came and you told us some jokes. I'm like, the fact that people have stayed with me and enjoyed that all the way through is really gratifying for me. I mean, like I say, I often say like I do this primarily for myself. I think most people, I said, let yourself be your motivation, do what you like, and then hope that other people like it enough to come with you. And I'm like, that's where I'm at. I'm like, this is not I didn't do this to pander to an audience or a crowd. I didn't go, oh, I'm going to make some money off those people who like sideshows. They seem to have a lot of actually. Number one, there's not that many of them. If I was going to do something for money, this would be the worst possible choice. But I have been, somehow lucky enough to make enough money out of it to have a successful career.
Mm-hmm. No, and be happy, and that's the
Oh
main
yeah.
thing. Do you haven't done fire stunts since 2015 in Malaysia? Is that
Oh yeah.
still you still haven't done it since then?
Oh well, yeah, because nobody's paid me enough money.
Mm.
When I went to Malaysia and they were like, oh, we really want you to do fire, and I told them up front at that point, I was like, I haven't done fire in forever because it's a pain in the ass for insurance regulating. I made a decision. I want to say 2004, 2005, somewhere around there, where it just became such a pain in the ass to even have like eat one torch, right? It was like they didn't want anything. Don't light anything. Don't do it. And it's like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to be constantly having this battle about whether or not I can have this in my show, about whether or not I've got the right insurance or whether or not the venue's got all this. I was like, I'm going to take that headache and get rid of it. I'm just taking fire out of the show, which was fairly big for me because I started with fire. It was literally my first working act, the 1st one that the traditional circus sideshow act that I had that I developed as a circus sideshow act. So I told those guys, I told the production in Malaysia, I'm like, I haven't done it in a while, but I'm like, I could still probably do all the basics. So I practiced for about a week before we went out, did it, came back, and it was great. It was fun, but it still has that sort of aspect where the only way you get to do it without a hassle is at outdoor shows, which is actually the most dangerous and worst way to do fire because you're outside and you're exposed to wind and other elements that can change the way the flame is moving. The worst burn of my life happened because the wind turned on me, breathing fire on a racetrack. But it was a dumb mistake, and it's one of those live and learn ones.
I would say so. The Truth Nail. You have a
Yep.
lot of your own skits that you do. Is there something that you're bringing that's new to your upcoming shows? I think you're doing something I saw on your Instagram with something 666.
Oh, stage six. I'll be in state in December. I'll be on stage 666 for the Good Times or the Good Things Festival.
Okay.
I always keep wanting to say Good Times because it's in my like Good Times, the TV show.
The TV
It's
show,
the Good
yeah.
Things Festival in Australia. Yeah, it's Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. And for that one, I'm actually working with a good friend of mine named Captain Ruin down there, and think it's Jacqueline is the woman who's on the show. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to be mostly the ringmaster for that one. I'll probably bust out a couple of stunts, maybe some blockhead action, things like that. But for that one, I'm going to be primarily being a ringmaster, being a hype man, directing the crowd, and running the stage. But yeah, Captain Ruin is a sight to behold. If anybody, it's going to be hard to see if you're not in Australia. But yeah, if you can make it to Australia in the first week of December and see Captain Ruin get crazy, he's one of my favorite acts to talk, because when you're talking an act, right, I know what he's doing. I don't have to watch it. I've seen him do it a million times like that. I get to watch the faces in the crowd, which when I'm doing stuff on my own, I'm talking and I'm having to pay attention to what I'm doing. I'll sneak peeks. But I love getting to do that MC role, especially when something really wild is going on, because I'm getting to, I'm setting the expectations with the words I'm saying, but I'm watching the reactions in real time. And I tell you, your audience faces for me are more entertaining than anything that could be happening on stage.
Speaking of MC, are you still doing work with your band Lizard Skinner? Are you still doing work with?
We haven't really done anything in quite a while. Like Lizard Skinner was my buddy Mossy, who was trying to think, like Strapping Young Lad. What was the Jaeger band? I can't believe I'm blanking on it. But anyway, good friend. He was like, you got to be in a band. He goes, I'm gonna put a band together, and you're gonna be in my band. You're gonna front my band, but it's gonna be your band. And we joked about it back and forth a whole bunch of different ways. And then he's like Lizard Skinner, and we did it because people always like, do you play Skinner songs? Like, no, absolutely not. It's a dumb one-off joke for us. Anybody else who enjoys it, but we recorded at Electric Audio in Chicago with Greg Norman back in 2010. So this is another one with sort of like, basically like, I'll do dumb projects all the time. I love to do stuff for fun. I had local artists in Austin. Like I just went out to a music video shoot last week. They were like, we just want weird and interesting people for this dinner table thing. So I don't know how long till they'll be done with it, but there'll be this music video of me rubbing hot dogs on my chest because they wanted a weird image, right? So I love just having fun and doing stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, Mossy, let's do the band and we'll see what it does. But he ends up putting together like genuine musicians. Like we end up with a real band. I was the weakest link in that room from day one. Yeah, I'm in there with guys who all have like real band, like signed band experience and experience recording and being in a studio. And I'm just like, hi, I'm green. But yeah, we got to record with Norman at Electrical, which is a historic studio and a great producer like that. And we put it out. So we actually did a legitimate album. So I can say I did it, but at this point, it's kind of like a checkbox thing. It was fun. I'm not against doing more projects and stuff like that, but it's not something that's come up.
No. And you have a lot. You have this book that you're working on, and just all the other performances you've done, especially with the broken glass, the hot coal. What was this kiddie pool thing that women were getting thrown into a kiddie pool of broken glass?
So we were at what was it called? I think it's Movie World. It's a theme park in Australia. And I was down there with the Space Cowboy and Zoe L'Amour, who I've kind of worked with for about 2012, right up to COVID. We used to always do the Adelaide Fringe together. And one Halloween season, they got us booked in Movie World down there. And we were trying to come up with some bigger, good stages for the theme park, stuff like that. And so we figured out we didn't have anyone doing broken glass in the show. And we're like, oh, well, that's something we could add. We'll do a broken glass walk in the show because Zoe does a lot of stuff. She does the Ladder of Swords and everything else. We're like, what if we had a broken glass walk for you? And when Shane and I were in Indonesia, in Malaysia for that TV show, he and I did that one together. We saw the street. One of the guys the whole show was this thing. It was like me and Shane against a magician and a street fakir. And going stunt for stunt back and forth. So one of the fakir, Master Lindad, one of his stunts was throwing himself into a giant pile of glass. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. Basically, same principle like that. We're like, yeah, Zoe could definitely do that. We could make that work. Like stunt work, and we got her up to it. But we didn't want to funny because the way that he does it is just he brings out a big tarp, throws down bottles, and it's a very vicious street, like hardcore act. The bottles are getting smashed, right? And then he's pushed himself in the body and it crunchy and all that. We kind of turned it into more of like a more Barbie fun, like torture act type of thing. So instead of just throwing out a tarp and breaking out glass, we would bring out a giant kiddie pool full of already broken glass and shake it around. And she comes out in a bathing, it was like a bathing suit outfit. She's dancing, like dancing on the glass and all that. But it was like, the way that we pitched that for people beforehand, to set it up, to be like, come see this show. You're going to see a beautiful woman thrown into a pool of broken glass. That was the pitch.
That's great. That's wild. Yeah, lots of stories that you have, and especially with your book, because I wanted to touch on the book that's already out. It's more of just articles that were from the past that. Was this stuff that you put on the internet before Google, that was about the body modification stuff before?
That would be when Google was still young. So the Once More Through the Modified Looking Glass is it's a collection of all the articles that I wrote for the old body modification e-zine. And well, I mean, I guess. Yeah, all the articles were written after Google, but the website goes back to like 96. So really, when I was sort of making the decision to really go after the full commitment to being Lizardman, because it was an idea that I had played with since I was 18, but I kind of got to around 96. I got to this point in my life where I was thinking about, again, like had one of those periods of time where you're like, what am I going to do? How is this going? And I wasn't really satisfied with a lot, and I kind of had my realization at that point was, you gotta swing for the fences at least once. You gotta take at least one of these crazy ideas and go for it, or you're gonna be disappointed you didn't for the rest of your life. And so at that point, I actually found BME online and became friends with its founder, and body modification became an even bigger part. Like I started to see threads started to come together right in my head of ideas. And so I was very involved for a long time. When Shannon actually started BME News as a portion of the site, doing opinion articles, whatever, I wrote a response to something that he wrote about world records. And, he actually was like, hey, you want to expand on that and turn it into like a full article? And I did. And then he was like, hey, how about you just freelance write for the website? And I was like, well, what do you want to do with it? He goes, look, every time you write me an article, you write an article and send it to me. He goes, every time I publish one, send you a couple $100, whatever. So it's just, we just established it. So originally I was kind of, churning out articles for money. I was like, I can use a couple $100. Let's write something. But what I really enjoyed about that, having that, article or having that platform, that position, right? And what I missed, or what's unfortunately lost because the servers were, wiped a long time ago, the discussions on the articles. Like if you read the articles in the book, so, and you remember, this is very early 2000s, the tattoo industry and the piercing industry, the associations are forming, but a lot of the things that we take for granted now in terms of safety and regulation and just common practice, were only then being figured out. And only then were kind of standards coming into place. Like the both industries, piercing and tattooing, have never been great at self-policing, but it started to show there. You started to get people, and the internet started to allow people to be like, well, you do things like that. Where would you do something like that? Why would you do that? And so like there was, at times there were sort of like Europe versus North America. Like you use cannula needles to pierce. Whoa, nobody uses cannula needles to, but things that we take for granted now in both those industries were being worked out in large part in discussions and forum groups on BME back then. And that's what I'd write an article, but then I would spend weeks in those comment threads, responding to people, learning from people, and sometimes it showed up in the later articles. And I'm like, that was a genuine, there's an instance where I was, in real time, a subculture was forming and establishing, its own ethics.
Mm. No, there's a lot of history here from what you do.
Oh, yeah.
It's documented with these articles and the sketches. You used to do sketchbooks.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I've always had an artistic inclination like that. So sketching is one of those things that I think it's one of the things that you do naturally, but then you learn to do it. I mean, and for a long time I was very typically want to be outsider critical of art classes like that. I went to school and did a lot of art, but didn't take a lot of art classes because you don't take a class for that. But that's sort of the real value in sort of in good art instruction is exactly that, to teach you how to use certain tools to figure yourself out and figure your work out. So, this sketching to me is very natural. You give me, there's a pen and a piece of paper, I'm going to doodle something sort of thing. And I'm not a traditional artist. Like, I'm not trying to come up with a graphic piece like that to do, but it's a way of letting your mind work and keeping things flowing. And and learning to use that.
Yeah. You used to read a lot of horoscopes. I did my research deep on you, but you don't believe, you think they're a bunch of BS. Why do you think
I do.
Why do you think horoscopes are a bunch of BS?
I do. I'm a big skeptic. Like, I'm one of those. I'm if you've ever looked into, like, there are a lot of different types of skeptics. I'm the type of skeptic, like, I want everything to be true, but I'm gonna make you prove it to me beyond any possible doubt. Like, I would love, to find out that there's some kind of magic that works or something, unfortunately, that actually works. But I am not going to accept it's real until I get some hard fucking proof, right? And the big thing for me with horoscopes is, how are you going to tell me that when the star signs were originally assigned, right? The sky looked different, right? According to most horoscopes, I'm a Gemini. But if we were 2,000 years ago, and we were or actually 2,600 years ago in ancient Greece, and so I'd be a Taurus. So I immediately questioned the foundational methods of horoscopes. Yes.
Fortune tellers too, not in the nose.
Yeah, no, I also, but I have this great appreciation for people who will do it. I will put no faith in a horoscope palm reader. You know what I love? I love professional palm readers that are good at their job, because that job has nothing to do with predicting the future. It has to do with reading a person. And that's something I understand as a performer, right? It's like, to me, it's a very specific and intimate type of performance, right? Where you invite someone, a producer, sit down here, and under the guise of me looking at your hand, I'm going to try and show how good I am at figuring out who you are as a person, right? That's what a palm reader doesn't really tell you your fortune, or a palm reader figures out who you are and then flatters you, right? The palm reader looks at you and goes, bet I know what to say to get this motherfucker to like me. Oh, I can see by your palm that you come from a long. Oh, your family has always been a line of hard workers. I can see the persistence. This line right here. Oh, anybody in your family live an unusually long time? No. Oh, that's probably what this brain is. Oh, you've given me this is about reading. Stage hypnotism is the same thing too. That's what I talk about being an instigator. Like, I love the techniques that the frauds use, because I have my own uses for them in my show. I never claim to predict anyone's fortune or tell them how their life is going to turn out, that, but I use the exact same, I use very similar techniques and language to get similar effects.
Speaking about the frauds, and even with the fortune tellers, every time I think of them, I think of that scene from Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure with the wallet, the Alamo. But speaking of frauds, with scammers in the sideshow business, because we look at it in all avenues today, people are buying followers, and now the managers and Hollywood, that's what they're casting people off of. The follower counts, content creators are all over the place. So do you see that in your lane as well, to where people are faking it till they make it to the top in sort of way? Is it accepted in your lane?
I mean, I feel like, fake it till you make it is accepted everywhere, depending on how you do it, right? I feel like the fake it till you make it is kind of the mean way of saying act like you've been here before, right? So, if I see somebody where I know it's their first big gig or whatever, acting like, oh yeah, I'm cool, I'm like, well, I don't think fake it till you make it. I think good for you for not being the starstruck idiot walking around bumping into things and getting in the way. Like, yeah, actually, behave appropriately. Put on a professional demeanor, whether or not you've actually figured that out or earned it yet. There's that. But when you talk about things like buying followers and stuff like that, where that's becomes a different aspect to it. And it's something a good friend of mine, Jay Whitecotton, and I have been doing this stuff on and off, what we call the shit show. But part of what we do is record behind the scenes, because a big part of our motivation was to do something. And we said at the very beginning, the only caveat about this is we cannot make it. No one can make any money off it, especially us. We're going to do it because we wanted it to be, to have that sort of, artistic, but also to prove a point about it. because what you'll notice with people, like there's a certain element of people in every business, whether it's bands and in comedians, so there's everybody starts as, and then there's that dude who's like, hey, I'll do your headshots, right? Mm-hmm. Or, there's the band starting, and then one goes like, hey man, I can draw the album cover for you, like for $50 or whatever. People instead of trying to make money off of their artistic product, right, try to make money off other artists in the same thing, right? Every comedy scene has the comedian who'll do your headshot, who'll record your set and edit it for you, and all that, because they're not working on their material. They're not actually trying to be a comedian. They want that cred, right? They want to be inside that. Mm-hmm. But there's industries grow up of artists exploiting other artists, or more exactly, they're artists who give up on being artists, start to exploit the artists they've met in order to make money, right? And it's like, oh, all of a sudden, like, hey, what, you getting up lately? When's the last time you just said, like, oh, I'm so busy with photos and everything? I'm like, yes, you're charging all your friends $100 for headshots, because you couldn't make enough money doing comedy yourself. Yeah, rather than get a job to support yourself and do it on the side or other that, you decided to make some money off the other people aren't making any money yet.
Extortion.
By selling them the promise that giving you money for these people will do, or whatever. Like it's more like, I see it a lot more with the recording and editing now, but there was a time when it was headshots. Right? But there are all these things in any industry you go into, like again, whether it's music, comedy, or even pole or burlesque. Now there are these people that are, hey, we make money off the artists. And that was sort of like Jay and I were like, we want to do something that contributes to the artist, but point out that it can be done without making money off them. So that's why I say, like, this shit show doesn't pay anything, but it also doesn't cost you anything, right? And it gives you a benefit. Like what we do is we go, look, we're going to promote the hell out of you in ways that you have never thought to promote yourself, and you're going to do the show for us. But like, you're not going to make anything, and we're not going to make anything. Like, if any money ever comes in, then yeah, it will get distributed, because we look around and we see so many people. We see people start up their own shows. They find a bar and like, oh, hey, they go to a bar. That if you give me $500, I'll put a show on in here every Thursday night, right? And that $500 is supposed to be to pay people, performers to come in. Then it turns out that everybody's doing the show for free, right? And they're kicking them, right? And is that person doing the show? Are they good? Are people coming to see them? Are people coming to see them because this is how people move into, and it's not always evil, but it gets muddy real fast.
Oh, yeah. Scammers, they're always working.
Yeah.
They never stop. And I did have to make a kind of a blessing in a big way with this, is that the day of 9/11, you were on a plane to overseas.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy. I
got to find out 9/11 happened, like it was almost 9/12 because I got up in the morning in Austin, Texas, like first flight out, so like 4 a.m. So I think I got into Chicago at like 6 or something like that. And I had my buddy, who at the time was working as my stage assistant. He was actually in Albany, New York, but he drove out to Boston to fly from Boston to Chicago early enough so that we could both be on the same flight from Chicago to Buenos Aires. So when we got on the flight from Chicago to Buenos Aires, towers hadn't been hit yet. We're in the air. We're flying. When we landed in Buenos Aires, we had no idea it had happened. They didn't make an announcement on the plane or anything like that. It was a totally normal flight. So, and it's a long ass flight from Chicago to Buenos Aires. Look at a globe. You're pretty much going.
Yeah.
Right. I think at that point in my life, it was probably the longest flight I'd ever been on. And he and I, exactly what you would expect. Like, what was it? Yes, 2001. How old? I was 29. Yeah, 29 years old. And still heavy drinking. So was he. So we were partying that whole flight down there, right? It was like, you get us up this early in the morning, we're gonna get a few cocktails on us, get on this plane, and we're gonna ride this out. Because I know that when we land there, we were supposed to go directly to a hotel, crash, get up the next day, film at a TV studio, have that night, and then fly back the next morning. Well, no, we get there, and nothing seemed odd, like in the airport at all, the Buenos Aires airport. We get our luggage, we walk out. I see the guy with the sign, right? But he's a driver. barely speaks any English, and it's all Portuguese, and we're not getting anything. But there was the one thing that we both picked up on, me and my bass scout. We were like, he seems like concerned. Like he kept asking if we're okay. And we're like, yeah, dude, we're fine. We're fine. And we realized in hindsight, we look fucking psychopaths, right? We're like, yeah, everything's great, dude. Everything's fantastic. Yeah, America. Yeah. We get our luggage in the car. We're like, yeah, everything's cool, man. Take us to the hotel. Fuck yeah, like that. And he's like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, just take us to the hotel. And he goes, no. He goes, studio first. And I'm like, no, we film tomorrow, dude. We film tomorrow. He's like, and we're just, well, whatever. He had the sign with my name on it, so we get in his car. So we've noted. We get to the studio, and we were supposed to go to the studio, and then I remember because they didn't tell me at the studio. We ended up at the hotel. I can't remember that, but anyway, it ends up we check into the hotel. And that was it. He was like, "Okay, we'll go to the hotel, drop off your stuff, and then you have to come to the studio." So you get to the hotel, check in. Again, nobody there, not a lot of English, but we get checked in, fine. Nobody, we don't know. We're in the room, and just, of course, first thing I do when I walk into a hotel room, turn on the TV. Right, that's reflex. Turn on the TV, start flipping around. Of course, it's all Portuguese, Spanish, and we don't speak it. Flip around. Find the Simpsons are on. Like, cool, put it on the Simpsons. I go to take a piss. As I'm pissing, Scott yells, "Dude, something fucked up happened." Like, what? He goes, "You got to get out here later." So I get out there. And I'm seeing the replays of what, and we went through it. Like I said, 12 hours after it happened in this hotel room in Buenos Aires. We're like, holy fuck, and we can't understand the newscast. Right? There's no subtitle. All we're seeing is plane hit building. I'm like, is that a fuck up? Was that a wondering? And then the second one, and we went through, and we're like. And then it starts to dawn on us. And we, like I said, we realize that's why he's asking if we're okay. And now we're just like, we need to get to the studio. We need to talk to someone. We need to find out what the fuck is going on in the world right now. Holy shit. And yeah, so they get to the studio, and then there's somebody there that was they're like, okay, here's, what happened. You guys were in the air and leaving American airspace, so they let the flight just go. And we're like, okay, so that's why we got here. They go, we don't know when we can send you back. They're like, we've been on the phone with the airlines in the airport all day long. We have literally no idea what's going on. Your taping is canceled because this is the new, right? The show we were doing was like a talk news show thing. Is the Susana Jimenez show down there, and he's like, Susana would still love to have you guys come in, but we're gonna do like a closed studio thing and just film it like a cutaway like that at some point. But they're like, don't even worry about that. They're like, you're staying in the hotel. We've got a budget. That was what was really refreshing and nice. That they were like, we're going to take care of you. You are officially our refugees. You're our two Americans. We've got you. You're staying in that hotel, and we're giving you money for food. So, I mean, as awful as everything about that is, whatever. I got a free vacation in Buenos Aires for a week, and we're running around buying we were getting these there were these 40 ounce beers at this pizza shop that we found. That it was called Crystal, and with a K. And I think it might be pictures I left up online of me and my buddy Scott. Just like for the equivalent of $5 American, we were each getting like a medium pizza and a 40. And that's what we were doing. Like, let's do it. And we started bar hopping around our block in the hotel. We just start walking. Go, first bar we see, we're in. Let's go. But. That's which is a wild 9/11 story. The wacky thing too about that though is that we ended up with all that spare time. Like we did go sightseeing, went to parks and saw just statues and shit around Buenos Aires. I forget what the actual thing that happened was that kicked it off, but there were a bunch of political riots and protests and things a few months later after we were there. Because I remember watching on CNN, watching this statue get pulled down, and I pulled up my phone. And I was like, I have a picture of that statue. It used to be standing up.
That's crazy. No, and thank God that everything was okay as far as you and getting home back to safety.
Oh yeah, I mean, as things go, it's the least tragic 9/11 story there is.
Absolutely.
But it is just indicative of for me, weird life story, whatever. Because everybody has their story about where were you and how did it happen. I was like, yeah, I was in another country and had no freaking clue.
Yeah, that's crazy. That really is. I wanted to make make it a little more, up tempo instead of,
Right.
everyone's all upset. Big punk rock guy who,
Yep.
I do a lot of hip hop. I know you've been on tours with a lot of heavy metal bands.
Metal
Who
and
are some
metal
of your
rock.
favorite hip hop artists? Who are some of your
Oh,
favorite?
well, I mean, probably for me, let's say, like, I was a big LL Cool J fan in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, LL Cool J in the '80s, like sort of like pop music and that. I was an absolute like devotee of Ice Cube's first album.
Oh, America's Most
Yeah.
Wanted.
Yep. Oh
Mm-hmm.
no, no. Before there's what's the one before? It's the one with 6 a.m. on it. It's the picture with him and Evil E on the hood of a car, girl. But anyway,
Oh, is it? Hold on a second. NWA. Is that what we were talking
well,
about?
no. I'm talking about Ice-T. I loved
Oh, I thought you
NWA
meant
when it
Ice
came out.
Cube. Oh, okay.
I did.
No, no, yeah, Ice
Yeah,
T.
I probably misspoke. Yeah, I'm talking about Ice-T because I was very big freedom of speech guy like that,
Okay, yeah,
and
Cop
Ice-T
Killer.
had freedom of speech. It was good. And also I was a huge fan of the original metal rap crossover with fucking Anthrax and Public Enemy.
Okay,
I
that's
love
classic.
that, dude. Getting to see them do that live is one of my primary like music like
Oh,
concert
I didn't even
festivals.
know that. You saw, so you went just you saw the performance. You saw it live.
Yeah, I got to see him do it live once. So
Wow, that's
yeah, that was
legendary.
crazy.
Yeah. What's the craziest celebrity interaction that you've had? I mean, the Snoop Dogg story was just
Right.
hilarious. That's one for the ages.
Here's what this is a crazy story. I don't know how crazy the interaction was, but so when I was doing the Jägermeister tours, when we would play in Vegas, we'd play at the House of Blues at Mandalay Bay. There's another bar in Mandalay Bay casino called Red Square. And Red Square, they have an ice locker. And inside the ice locker, different companies and like rich people have like little booths where you store booze in there. So you go into the ice locker, they give you a big fur coat, you put on a big fur hat, and you go and you have to be a guest of someone. It's a private thing. So Sidney Frank Importing owns a locker and they keep a bottle of Jägermeister in there. So whenever Jägermeister people come through, they can go in there and do an ice shot of Jaeger in the locker in Red Square. So of course we played the show. After the show, let's go to Red Square. I'm like, yeah, I'm putting on my big coat. I'm going to live in that locker and just do shot after shot. People do a shot. So at one point I come out of the locker and I am already walking blackout drunk. I have this. Here's my memory of this. Is it goes like this: I come out of the locker, I take off the big furry coat and the hat, and I give it to the girl who takes the hat. It goes like that, and I turn around, and at the corner of the bar, I see Carrot Top. I'm hammered. It's like 2 a.m, and I remember walking over, thinking like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go say hi to Carrot Top." What the fuck? So that's and then I'm after that, I don't have much of any memory for the rest of the night. That's the way I used to drink on those tours. That's why I don't drink anymore. But so the next morning, I'm pulling myself together in the front lounge of the bus, like, oh fuck, man, Vegas is good as always. Blah blah blah. Adam Grayer, who was one of the guy who's Rick's assistant, helped run the tour and was really involved in all the things like that. He comes in, he goes, "Hey man, what were you and Carrot Top talking about last night?" And I go, "What But what do you mean?" And I gradually, like, I groggily in my mind, I go, "Oh yeah, Carrot Top was at the bar last night." He goes, "Yeah, and you guys had like a 30-minute conversation." And I go, "What?" He goes, "You walked out of the ice locker, walked right up to him, like shook his hand, sat down, and you guys started talking." And like people just stood around you, like nobody, a bunch of people just stood around and watched the Lizardman and Carrot Top have a fucking little bumbling conversation with each other. And then at one point, you got up, like shook his hand and took off. And I was like, yeah, it's probably when I made my way back to the bus like that. He goes, and Carrot Top and his people rejoined his people and went over like that. And I was like, dude, I have no idea. But so apparently in like 2004, I had an in-depth conversation with Carrot Top, blackout drunk in a casino in Las Vegas, and to this day have no idea what we talked about.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Right.
Well, Erik, I know we've covered a lot here tonight. Is there anything else you want to let us know as far as upcoming show? I know we talked about Stage 666.
We talked about Stage 666 in Australia. So anybody in Australia seeing this in Melbourne, Sydney, or Brisbane, come out and say hi. Actually, right now, I wish I could officially. I think right now I'm gonna be in Miami for a lot of November and December, but I'm waiting on the contracts to come, so I can't officially say anything because I don't know. Nothing's official till the paper signed, right?
Yeah. When you coming back to New York, I want to catch you at a show when you're here.
That's a good question. I got to work on that.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I'll be in Western New York again next year for Palooza, but that's not till August, and it's out in Dunkirk on the other side of the state, south of Buffalo.
Oh my god, yeah, that's a trek for me. Hey,
Yeah, that's it.
I might
Dude,
be able to
I
check it out. Hopefully,
remember.
you come back to Coney Island or anywhere. You go to other
Yeah,
places in the city area too. So
yeah. Well, it's the thing. That was the good thing about that Times Square Ripley's is that it often meant at least once a year I'd end up down there just to do a little wave and say hi to people like that. So not having that there has kind of cut back on my trips.
oh man, no, that's unfortunate. Well, you get to stay down in Texas for the hot weather, and
Yep.
you get to enjoy the
I'll
pet
stay warm.
ferrets. How's the
Yeah,
ferrets?
ferrets. So ferrets are all doing great. Yep. We got
Yeah.
our old queen quokka and then our two twins, the two babies that are tearing up the house.
Hey, that you need that. That's the company there.
Yep, that's right.
So, what's the future for you as far as the book? Because we talked about this book that you're putting together. How about like
Right.
a
Yeah.
documentary on
Well, that's what the book is kind of meant to be, and I'm doing it in a very specific way. Like I mentioned before, like I used to selling pitch cards, like postcards, very traditional. I always wanted a pitch book, right? If you go back to like the original tattooed man, the Prince Constantine, George Consensus, the tattooed Greek, and a lot of people afterwards, they always did a pitch book which told the story of their tattoo. Now it was often the story of being abducted while at sea, right, or being shipwrecked. It was that was early advertising. That was the character building they're doing, and it sold it, right. It made it fanciful. It wasn't just like, hey, come look at this guy who covered his body in tattoos. It was like, no, you got to come see this guy. His story is wild. His shipwrecked. He swam to shore. Cannibals tried to eat him. Then a king captured him, but he slept with his daughter, so they sentenced him to death by tattooing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, obviously that level of bullshit's not going to fly today.
no.
But I always wanted to have that document to tell the story and to do it in a way. So that's what I've spent the better part of this year so far crafting it. I'm kind of I'm fighting those last little bits of writer's block, or is it ready yet, sort of thing like that. But yeah, I want to get that out hopefully by the end of this year and have that there. And then I want to start working on similar books for like the story of how I ended up splitting my tongue and how it was done and those sort of things. It's also kind of the documentation of it because, when I was younger, I didn't document very well. I didn't do a lot of documenting because I didn't care, right? I was living in the moment. And as much as I still love that, it is something I think that's something about me that has changed a little bit over time and with age. I'm in my 50s now, and I actually do stop and consider. Sometimes I'm like, well, it would be nice if the facts were out there because, I'll see stuff on the internet about me and I'll be like, close, not entirely accurate, but pretty close. And like, I need to put the definitive version out there. That's on me.
Mm-hmm. No, and we'll be looking forward to. I'm telling you, got to get some movie roles here. I think you're perfect for movie because of the comedy, even your own comedy stand-up special, something like that for Netflix.
You preaching to the choir. Give me a cast. This is talking about like industries that are faking it till you make it and buying something like that. People often tell me, they're like, why don't you do more movies? They're like, look, it's not like I'm not trying. Like Dave Bautista, Bautista, the wrestler. Yeah, mm-hmm. he talked about it with his acting career. He goes, you'd think coming from there, he goes, yeah, there were a couple of them, like right away. He goes, you get a couple of easy offers, like action movies, like Beast, like direct to TV. He's like, I had to hire. He said he had to hire an acting agent because even if you're fucking Dave Bautista, people aren't going to cast you. They're not going to know you're available. They're not going to know what you do. They're not going to look for you. Right?
That's crazy.
So I'm like, and look, for all of my success, I have not done shit compared to him, right? Or somebody like if those guys need agents to get work, right? What chance does an independent lizard with no agent have at getting it, right?
And just think, everyone that's is successful now is competing with the people you never heard of before who bought 1 million followers all the way to the red carpet.
Well, you know what? There is coming back around to that I have had Schadenfreude moments, because when the thing about that is eventually in most cases you get exposed, right? So in 2020, before COVID hit, in February, I was in Australia and I was doing the Adelaide Fringe Festival. And there was a person that was in the tent next to the one that I was working out of. It was coming in, a kind of a comedian speaker thing like that. But the buzz on them was they're like, oh, they've got 2 million followers on Instagram. They've got all the huge online. And so actually the wife of the festival promoter like took them on as a client personally. And so they were basically making all these demands and requests like, oh, well, this person's important. Like, you guys are going to have to be a little bit nicer. We want you to adjust your showtime so your noise doesn't impact them, because we're all intense, right? We try to respect showtime. They're doing all this, and they're playing all this diva card bullshit based on they've got the social media following. They do the blah, 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 and they get there, and you know what? None of those social media followers were in Australia, apparently, because nobody fucking showed up. It was hilarious. We're all like, yeah, 2 million people love you on the internet, but nobody can be bothered to show up. Yeah. Because that's what a lot of followers are, right? I don't know how many people I follow on. So that, like an artist or a band, I'll do like, all right, just because I follow you, it doesn't mean there's a chance in hell necessarily that I'm showing up at your show, right? And that's what I've seen this happen a lot of times with festivals and people. And but it's not like they're not making money too, right? This guy came in and he was making all these demands, but he was making money off of stuff online, but he didn't make the festival any money. He didn't make them. So he was a massive failure to them, right? Because they weren't getting a piece of any of that, right? But I've seen it happen many, many times where somebody has been brought in because they have whatever internet following, but they don't have any live skill chop. They don't have any chop. That's the other thing. If people do show up, they're very disappointed, because doing something with a live audience is way different than doing something on your phone. Even if you're doing like a live thing on your phone, like it's a different thing. It's a different type of, it's like theater is different than dance, or, it's different than whatever. A lot of them don't have the skills because they weren't built off of a performance background. It's like you said, it's like, oh, you did something dumb or horrible, so now 1 million people are watching what you do. That doesn't mean you're good at what you do. It means you're trying. How many failed attempts at stand-up have we seen from people who get internet famous? And they're like, oh, I'm going to do a comedy club tour. Yeah, you don't see them do more than one tour usually. No. Because after the first tour flops, no one will book them anymore. They're like, oh, yeah, your internet followers aren't paying $30 a head. No. It's the other thing. It's like, yeah, you've got 5 million followers on the internet. How much money did they have to pay to follow you? Zero, right? How much does it cost them to watch your stuff on? Zero. All right. And you want them to pay to see you now to do what? What you've already done online, what they've already seen? No, it's got to be something better, something different. Like that's where I feel like, kind of that's where the fallout will happen with this, because more and more as that occurs, you'll see that like people will not take a chance of, like, internet success doesn't translate into real world ticket success. So if you're trying to move into a ticketed live event business, that credibility just doesn't do anything.
I mean, because that was going to be the thing I followed up with you on that. It was that the future of the sideshow business, because the internet is a sideshow now, but it is. People are crazy.
Yeah. Well, I've made this joke for years about Ripley's, and not to be mean. I'm like, I am surprised. I'm happy they're surviving, but I'm surprised because what's the business model? The business model is give us some money to come inside and see some unbelievable shit. Mm-hmm. Dude, I got the internet. I can see unbelievable shit for free all day long. And now with AI, I can make up unbelievable shit, right? that I want to see. It's like, how are you getting people to pay money for this? And that's why I say, where Ripley's messes up and others have too, where you bring back, it's the human connection. Like, I believe very much that my success comes from the fact that there are, as weird as what I've done, as crazy and as different as my life and views may be from yours or somebody listening to that, there are relatable aspects here.
Absolutely.
I am a genuine person, and I will be honest with you about these things, and I will share that story. There's things you can learn from me. There's things I can learn from you. We can have an exchange. That doesn't really happen, if, and what we're talking about with the fake it till you make it, so like, if people are being genuine, almost anything can be good and entertaining and fun and valuable. If people are just trying to suck the last dollar out of it, it stops being fun really fast. And that's one of the things if we go generationally like that. Younger audiences, they figure out the crap faster, right? They know when they're being conned.
You think so? Because I think a lot of because like as far as my
Well,
audience, I feel like they're trapped in, they're feeding into the garbage of, and I'll speak on it. As far as musical artists go, there's way too many artists that aren't good that are making a lot of money.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll backtrack that a bit. I think there's a point, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they're age demographic groups. Like we're going like that. Like I think that young adults, how's that? Like, and I don't mean young adults
Okay.
as like 19, 20. I mean people who are actually starting to live their lives as adults
Hmm.
with the background that they've gotten, right? With the experience of the world of the last 25 years or whatever. It's like I say, going back to me in the 80s was the sort of that dawn of the like, oh, don't trust the government. I don't trust anything you say until I see it, sort of thing. Like, well, that was, I was a little bit of a weirdo. People were like, when I was younger, people were like, you're kind of paranoid, aren't you? Like now, my paranoia from when I was 18 would be, oh, you're not paranoid enough today. People would call me naive now. If so I feel like there's a certain amount, a certain more like layers that would pull back. I think, yeah, in terms of like propaganda and rhetoric, that where people are, like you said, are feeding into, are falling into a lot of things, because those machines are becoming more and more refined, right? The
Mm.
minute the minute people start paying attention, and it's advertising, whether it's advertising a product or advertising an ideology, it's advertising. And the way advertising works is to get your attention, hold your attention, make it seem like it's normal, make it seem like it's not normal if it's not there, right? And so if you stop paying attention, it adapts, it evolves.
Mm.
But yeah, back to like the thing about it, what's the future of sideshow, since everything's a sideshow, everything's freaky. Really, I often differentiate and be like, oh yeah, you guys out there, probably a lot of you guys think you're freaky, right? But you don't get paid for it. You're freaky.
Exactly.
I'm a professional freak. This is entertainment. But like the behind the curtains version of that is when I'm working with other performers. I don't be like, actually, great example is one of the foot archers I worked with in Australia for years. She was 19 years old. She was a gymnast, and this corporate entertainment company completely sold this operation. They wanted a woman to shoot a bow and arrow with her feet, right? You've seen that act?
I have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen that.
So there was the woman who originally did it in the 80s, right?
Hmm.
And because there's demand that she couldn't meet, you know, imitators pop up. Well, there's this, like I say, corporate entertainment company that they wanted to be able to offer foot archery as a show. So they went and they found a bunch of gymnasts and got them to train to do the act. They didn't train them to be performers. They simply got them to be able to do it. When this woman came to us at the sideshow and wanted to do it, we are like, okay, well, you need an act, right? What you can do is a great stunt, but you need an act. You need a personality, because that's the whole thing. When people think it's about swallowing a sword or eating a torch or shooting a bow and arrow with your feet, that's not what the act is. The act is you. I
Mm.
always tell young performers like, you tell me what you do, and I will make it sound amazing on the microphone in front of the tent. But if you want to be a success, you have to sell yourself, because there's another person that can shoot a bow and arrow with their feet. There's another guy shoving a sword down his throat. There's another person laying on a bed of swords. Like almost nothing is unique. And if it's unique in a very trivial way. Like I always say, I'm like, this is the only time you'll see a green person swallow a sword, right?
Yeah.
Like it's trivial. It's silly. It's meant to get a laugh like that, right? But it's not that I can swallow a sword. It's that I can make you want to see me, specifically me, swallow a sword, right? I tell people again about selling yourself, like create a relationship with the audience, so that when you get to the point that you're walking on coals, they actually give a shit whether or not you get burned. It's not, oh, let's see if this guy can do it, because let's face it, the kids, who knows what they think, but the adults in the room, they understand that this is a show. And what we say is going to happen is going to happen. They're like, they may not know how we do it or why we're doing it, but like they know we're not going to fool them in that way, and we're not trying to. What we're trying to do is say, hey, here I am, a person just like you, about to do something that probably seems really stupid, dangerous, difficult, and probably is, right? And I want you to care about the fact that I'm doing it. Why should you care? Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Now, we have to do this in 3 seconds with an intro or whatever, but there is that thought behind it. There's that thought behind it, and I think it bears out if you look at all the people who have a great deal of success. Is that what they're really doing is making friends with the audience. It's selling themselves, so that it wouldn't matter. They could go out there and do any act. as long as it was them, right? A lot of this stuff is, that when it goes too far, it's cult of personality, right?
Yeah.
But when it's, as long as we understand, like, look, you don't need to agree with me. You don't need to live your life out. You don't need to vote like me. We don't need to have a conversation about any of that shit. You just need to agree that we're both going to be happier if I pull this off, right? Cool.
Yeah, or religion. I do agree with you on the religion part.
Yeah.
I saw the quote. Great.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Great
I sometimes
evangelical.
forget what I leave up online. Somebody read that back to me not too long ago in an interview, and I was like, oh shit, that's still on the website, isn't it? Cool.
The evangelical.
I'm like, my opinion hasn't changed. It's just I didn't realize I left it up there like a billboard. My mom. I remember my mom making reference to where we grew up. She called it the Bible Belt of the North a couple of times because I was a very anti-religious kid, and at first the reason that most kids are is like, I don't like going to church. It's fucking boring and it's annoying, and some of the adults there are kind of fucking creepy. And
we know all about that.
Yeah, and once I started getting a little bit older and actually started to think like, well, this is fucking insane. Like, you don't actually believe this, do you? Like, literally? No, there's no fucking way. And yeah, it kind of goes downhill from there in the very, very, very traditional manner. But at the same time, though, because it was a very important part of culture and community, like, I went through a lot of things. I went to church school, which is something I couldn't even believe was legal. Like, we're in normal school, and then for an hour a week, they take us out and give us basically gospel lessons. Like, what happened to church? I was literally in the 80s going, what happened to separation of church and state? Like, and compared to now, I'm like, well, fuck, I guess that was that.
Yeah, well, you're seeing it now more than ever. There is no separation anymore. It's really come together.
I mean, we just had the fucking blatantly unconstitutional legislation in Texas. You must put the 10 Commandments in your classroom. Hold the fuck on. Did we have this argument like 50 years ago and figure it out? Like, no, we're not doing that.
Kirk statues everywhere. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but the Kirk statues everywhere.
I mean, here's the little thing. Like, look, like I said, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in biblical prophecy, but there are some false fucking idols running around. Like, I have not seen more false idols in my lifetime than I have in about the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah, it's one that's orange. It's crazy, man. It really, and the whole legislation, the whole cabinet's freak show of its own. If you really look at them, you mentioned professional freak before. You know what brought up? Have you seen the movie Bubble Boy?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
remember that one?
I had to think about it. Yeah, I don't know what you mean, but yeah, because he goes. Yeah, at one point they take him to the sideshow.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you said that.
I'm trying to remember. I think I know one of the people that's in that freak show. I'm trying to remember who's in it. No, that's right. Beetlejuice. No, there's somebody else in there. Maybe maybe Allison Blythe. I think there's somebody there that I was on a talk show with at some point.
Okay,
right? Like that. Because I remember looking at that and being like, oh, okay, or maybe George the Giant has a scene. Somebody it's weird. Like, talking about like doing movies, we all get the weird cameos, and I'll tell you, the biggest thing is scheduling. Like, I can like list off projects that I didn't get because I was somewhere else working. So I went on a cruise in 2000, and I got back, and this is how long ago it was. Back then there was no phone service, and I couldn't get on to email that. I got back, and I had missed a chance to do Malcolm in the Middle.
Wow, yeah, it's a huge show.
Yeah, because I was out of town the wrong week in 2000.
They couldn't have made an adjustment here for a cameo. Crazy.
Yeah. And if you remember American Horror Story Freak Show, so they had Matt Frazier as CeeLo the Seal Boy, right? So that role, that character hadn't been completely defined yet. They wanted a freak for it, and it came down to him or me. And I had an option to go run a grind theater on the bank of the Thames in London for 2 months that I had signed on to, which was going to be, I thought it was going to be great. It turned out it was. So I was during the filming, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I really want to do it, but I don't know. But Matt is also a classically trained actor. So he was able to be like, well, I've actually, because they were like, we're going to cast someone based on what they are and then hope to get the best performance out of them. Well, he was like, well, he literally went to a school for Shakespeare. He's English, which is funny. So he came to America to shoot that show, and I went to London to run a theater. He's a theater actor. And I was actually, there's a lot of fun stuff, and we're friends. So we ended up talking. Actually, after he got done shooting, I was still in London. He came home, and we ended up talking about it. And I was like, yeah, like I knew that there was one other person that had gotten down to me, or one other person. They went, and in the sort of interview parts, I underplayed. I thought I was, tried to be. I was like, well, I'm willing to do whatever. Like, let's get a performance. I'm not an actor technically. I've got some community theater experience, like college and high school acting and stuff like that. Whereas, he came in and he goes, well, I attended the Royal Shakespeare. I was like, he blew me out of the water, and he was great at the show too. Yeah, he did a great job, and I think the series came out great, and I made a fuck ton of money with my friends in London, so I got no problems or regrets there.
No. Are you a big horror guy? Are you a big horror guy, like horror movie guy?
Oh, here's the thing. I like horror movies. My wife loves horror. I know she could hear me. I was about to be like, yeah, I like horror movies, but not as much as my wife. Yeah, she loves horror. She just got done doing Fantastic Fest, the festival here in Austin, which has also been very, very heavily horror based. And we've got a bunch of Dario Argento DVDs and Blu-rays and whatnot, and
Suspiria.
Sam Raimi.
Suspiria.
Suspiria. Yep. Yeah. She's nodding and smiling at me. Original Suspiria.
Yeah, the 70s one, 77, I think. Yeah, classic. Yep. You do conventions? You do horror conventions?
I did one in San Antonio a few years back, but they've never been a regular thing. It's kind of those conventions are a little bit of a weird vibe for me, because one of the things I've never done is charge people for photos. And those
I don't
events
agree with that either. Yeah,
people, and I don't have a serious problem with somebody if they're going to do it. Like if you're going to do it and you do it in a straight up sort of way, okay, fine, whatever. That's your choice. But yeah, I've always sort of said, like, if you want a picture with me, then I'll just take a picture with you. I want you to have the picture. If you want to support me, I will sell you some other souvenir or something like that. The closest I ever came was Polaroids, where I'd be like, look, if you give me a couple of bucks so I'm covering the film, that's fine. It was never a huge profit maker, but it was a way for me, like, okay, you can have a souvenir. But yeah, I had, and this is my sort of principal stand on it. It's something that came from touring with bands and things like that. We talk about merch, is that I did very well those early Jaeger tours with my merchandise, because the headlining band, like Slayer, their merch guy put my wool hat up in the center of the Slayer display, and like Carrie would wear it on stage some nights, and people thought it was a Slayer hat, but no, it was mine. I was making that money. So, but it got to the point where if I was going to keep doing merch the way I was doing and making the money I was making, that was going to have to be a focus, right? And I made a decision, and it's a personal decision. Everybody at some point, if they're lucky enough, gets to make it, which is, are you trying to be an artist, or are you trying to run a merch company? Like, what's your goal? What do you want to be doing? Because I found I was putting a lot more time and effort and necessary work, bookkeeping, design, everything else, like, and the logistics of getting stuff shipped out on the road. I was running a small merch company. I wanted to be a performing artist. I mean, I was too, but yeah, it got to the point where I personally thought I had to make a choice. So I did. And I was like, and also because it does affect the way you do things. Like I say, I did well. I made a lot of money. I've coached other people. I will tell you, if you're a band or a sideshow performer or somebody else, and you want some tips on how to sell more merch, I got them. I mean, and I learned from I still don't like Jim Rose, but one of the things I learned from him and that he was very effective at was selling fucking t-shirts at a concert. Like, I could do it. I have literally sold dog do on a stick at a tattoo convention. I did it to prove a point. I went and got a stick, rubbed it in some dog do, brought it inside, auctioned it off to a live crowd, and got $50. Right. So I like, if you want to sell shit, I know how to do it, but I'm like, that's not the point of what I do. So for me personally, I have basically gotten as far away from having merch, doing merch I want. I want to be paid as an artist, not as a merchandise salesman. But if you want a better chance at making a living doing this, you should be a merch salesman. Yeah. like you look around at bands who, there are bands that I've seen go through where it's like, if they have good merch sales, it'll prop up lagging album sales. In fact, you get to keep more of your merch money than you do your album money. It's better to make a really popular t-shirt than it is to make a really popular album. unless you make a million selling album, right? It's like your album has to be really fucking good to make you more money than your t-shirt. So where are you going to spend your time? Spend your time on your t-shirt, right?
Exactly.
Promote the fuck out of your t-shirt. Get the other bands to wear your t-shirt. Take a picture of it. And like I say, it affects your thinking, right? I would be out on the road. I would be making decisions, or I would see opportunities from a merch sales perspective and think, I got to go do that. And then I caught myself thinking that way and went, that's not how I want to do this.
No, you've done everything the right way. We all know you for all your work. You've been showcased pretty much everywhere. Everyone knows who you are. National Geographic, that was a big headliner. You've been everywhere, man. Everyone knows you. The performances, the stand-up, the world records, the Ripley's books. You've been around, man. But Erik,
I got a decent looking resume by these days.
I'd say so. Definitely a legend in my opinion, for sure.
Thank you.
Just everything you've done, of course. Erik, man, is there anything else you want to let your fans know? Anything else the audience?
I think we've covered it, dude. I think we've covered it.
Yeah, we got everything in about your life story, pretty much everything, and I appreciate everything that you've done and continue to do. And let them know they can follow you on Instagram and all your platforms as well.
Yeah, it's thelizardman.com is sort of the main point. Go there and you'll have links to anything that I put up officially. Social media stuff is all pretty much the Lizardman 23. Because it was the 90s. I had a number on my name.
Michael Jordan.
It's you know what I watched the Bulls' big run in the late 80s. That was pretty much the only time that I watched the NBA, so I was a fan. But it's not. It's more of the 23 enigma. If you're familiar with William Burroughs and the idea of 23 is an enigma number. I mean, there was the Jim Carrey movie that came out, but that's way after the fact. For me, it was something that I stumbled on with Burroughs in the 80s. So 23 was all this sort of thing.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to do my research on that, look into that for sure. But Erik, man, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you brought to the show here tonight. Had a great time speaking with you and look forward to everything you got on the way.
Thanks, brother. I had a good time talking with you too.
Of course, man. Anytime, you're always welcome back on the show. Whenever you got some press, especially with the upcoming book, any upcoming shows you need press, you're always welcome.
Appreciate it, man. I will let you know.
Absolutely, Erik. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Later, man.
Yeah, later. Bye-bye.